I gotta send links out too. I got people requesting.
Welcome to Community Roundtable. They call me Ferdinand, the bringer of balance, leader of many disciplines, and one of your hosts of Community Roundtable today. I'm here with the brother Ra Thriva, and we're on episode
Mhm.
15, the 7 Hermetic Principles. This is part 2. Last episode, we came in with the first 3 principles of mentalism, correspondence, and vibration. We talked a little bit about the divine paradox. And today we're going to go a little bit deeper. We're going to go into the other 4 of the principles: cause and effect, polarity, rhythm, and gender. How you
Mm.
doing? Rob? What's going on, brother?
Hey man, like I said, I'm still reeling, and it felt like it wasn't last Monday; it was last Thursday. But I'm still reeling off the last episode. If you were like me, you've been having a little feeling like a kid knowing that Christmas is coming. Something like, yo, we get to go back on Monday. But the
Facts.
last episode was so good. So yeah, man, I'm here to just talk with the family. Chop it up with my guys always, and then just try to deliver as much truth. And I just dedicate truth. I just think truth is as you just talked about earlier, is just me being myself. That's the truth, my truth. And if it resonates for you, if it does, if it doesn't, you can keep it moving. Or you per now, I heard you talking about on Facebook, you might have a call and smoke show one day, and we can just have some conversations, friendly or non-friendly. I'm unbiased with it. I'm non-biased with it.
Real talk, man. Like I honestly think that I'm one of those people who I could put out something controversial and I still sleep like a baby at night, right? Well, a lot of the posts that I put on social media, what I've noticed is a lot of the people, they don't really respond to the positive posts. I may
Mm,
make posts about using sarsaparilla to boost iron,
right,
so blood flow is better, and then you have certain other healings that happen as a result of the blood being
right,
moving in its proper flow, right?
right.
Well, not too many comments, not too many likes and shares. And I ain't tripping. It's not even a big deal because I know people still saw it though, right?
Right.
Well, the controversial posts, those are the ones like I'll have like 150 comments, 75 comments or something like that, right? And I don't make these posts to achieve that. I only make these posts to put a new thought pattern, a new idea out in the air. Put hopefully it lands on some soil that is rich, and
Right.
even if it's in the crack of a sidewalk, it maybe it grows, right? That's it. And then it turns into this bloodbath of comments for
Yo, it's
the rest of
crazy
the races.
because I've noticed the same thing. I post the stuff that I post, but then when I post something that's kind of edgy or controversial, it's like it's instant. So to me, I was thinking the other day, like, yo, the algorithm can scan it, and I think it pushes things that are controversial. I think it knows what can, because what else is the data? How is also now everyone sees. So either
Well,
you're ignoring.
I agree with you.
Yeah, it's either you're ignoring everything else, or maybe you're not seeing it, or maybe when I post something that's controversial, the AI can scan it and say, this is going to get us engagement, this is going to give us ticks, this is going to give us views, which is ultimately money for them and us, depending on what type of account you got. So I've been as well, even you saw the stuff I was posting about the earth. I'm not gonna say flat earth, I didn't necessarily say anything about, but I know that these are things I'm just testing, like what happens if I just say something abrasive a little bit,
Right.
and see, because it appears that if you're trying to do things in a so-called righteous way with goodwill and good faith, and you're not gonna get, so you have to get a little bit edgy, Charleston Whiteishy, if I even may dare, to jerk the algorithm, build the attention, and then just build off that. I guess they say it's no such thing as bad attention. You know what I mean? At times, so
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's definitely an algorithm working, and And then at the same time, I would say, in addition to the algorithm, it's actually the people. Like the
mm,
the people, they're the people have their ways, you
right,
know,
facts,
and these ways a lot of the times are aligned with the algorithms, but it's still like it's like carnal. It's carnal ways that are very much so out of control. But when you have carnal ways that are out of control, this brings us to our conversation today, right? So we're talking
right
about
though.
7 Hermetic principles, the last 4, And the next principle that I like to introduce is the principle of polarity, right? Because that's kind of what we're really talking about here. When a
Mm,
person's carnal ways are out, their thought of carnal is out of control, was far off on the right or far off on the left, but the higher self is on the other side, right? So if you're
mm,
too far to one side, you're not going to be able to even hear what that other side is saying.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
You're not going to be able to feel in that space because you're too
Right.
far. It takes balance.
Yeah, yeah, a certain, and it does. That's why, I follow even like on X and some of these platforms, people who I don't agree with, and I make sure that I don't filter every single thing out that I don't want to see, and in my filter, because that means that I'll become unbalanced, and we've seen that with the, for lack of a better demonstration, the elections. The left is in their own echo chamber because they control a lot of the media. There's an opposing conversation that's happening that's on a different polarity scale. And then they was able to see in real time what the majority of the people thought, and they didn't understand how, that they were a minority in thinking. So this is why having, a more equal approach, like you said, so that you can get a little people on both sides, it'll help you be, if there's such thing is a more balanced. And yeah, man, definitely bring that up so we can get straight to the thing. But yeah, absolutely, man. And polarity is really an interesting thing too, as is explained, in the Kabbalion. Especially for those of us, I assume if you're watching this, I assume if you're interested in this, like you are an adept, you are someone who is seeking or just trying to understand. So, when it comes to polarity, once you really start to understand, and I'll read a little bit of it. Everything is dual, everything has poles, everything has its pair of opposites. Like and unlike, this is what I was just trying to touch on. Like and unlike are the same. Opposites are identical in nature but different in degree. Extremes meet, all truths are but half truths, and all paradoxes may be reconciled. So, for me, when I understand, let's say, so people who's more left leaning, they don't understand by them leaning further away, it creates more of the opposite polarity. You know what I mean? It
Facts.
creates more of its dual nature. And the more that you go away from a center being, the more that you'll see things from a warped perspective. You know what I mean? So it's definitely, important to, dive into this particular principle so that when you do want to kind of refute or argue with things, you kind of understand to the degree you're arguing with yourself. You know what I mean? So polarity is definitely a interesting one to talk
Absolutely.
about.
Let me go ahead and jump in here. I'm gonna do a little reading, and I want to touch one thing. In a lot of the religious texts, uh, humans, for lack of a better term, are referenced as man, right? So when we think about what you just read in this preceding paragraph,
Mm,
like and unlike are the same.
mm,
Man and woman are the same, right? So I was
mm,
just thinking about that, but I'm gonna go ahead and read. This principle embodies the truth that everything is dual. Everything has two poles. Everything has its pairs of opposites, all of which were old Hermetic axioms. It explains the old paradoxes that have perplexed so many, which have been stated as follows. Thesis and antithesis are identical in nature, but different in degree. Opposites are the same, differing only in degree. The pairs of opposites may be reconciled. Extremes meet. Everything is and isn't at the same time. All truths are but half truths. Every
mm,
truth is half false. There are two sides to everything, etc., etc., etc. It explains that in everything there are two poles, or opposite aspects, and that opposites are really only the two extremes of the same thing, with many varying degrees between them. Right. So I'm going to stop there. I'm gonna
mm,
let Rob have that after I give just a little bit. Right. So when I think about when I think about this, right, let me go back to for just for a second. When I think about the opposites, I think about thermometers, hot and cold. Where is hot? Where really is cold, right?
mm.
you
Right.
know, this is the principle of polarity manifest within that a piece of equipment, right? Same thing with two sides to everything. So we're looking at batteries. right? Double A, triple A, don't matter which type of battery that it is, but we have to have positive and negative when we put it in a remote control, or else it doesn't produce power, right?
Mm,
Well, think about that, or else it doesn't produce power.
mm,
Man and woman, they got to be together, or else they don't produce power. Child,
mm,
wealth, everlasting life more abundantly,
mm,
right? We can go so many directions with the principle of polarity. But one of the ways that I love to think about it is, and I'm gonna throw this out there at you. It might be a little wild, but I say it often, right, to different people. I break down being yourself and winning in life with this analogy of Dr. Dre, Tupac, the microphone, and the sound board, right? Well, if we're operating in the principle of polarity effectively, we're going to be able to tweak. We're going to be able to tune, and we're going to be able to slide love, hate, happiness, sadness, right? We're going to be able to get all of this right on the soundboard first, right? Dr. Dre Mind doing this, okay? And then now we hit Tupac. Hey, Tupac, go ahead and put out a melody, right? And that
mm,
melody is the greatest ever. Well, why? We use the principle of polarity to properly tune each piece, and then we
mm.
properly tuned Dr. Dre, and we properly tuned Tupac, right? And this is one of the ways that the
Right.
principle of polarity can manifest. Not necessarily this exact analogy, however, we do, in my personal opinion, we all do tweak
Right.
our moods and
Right.
our different ways of doing things using this principle. Most people unknowingly.
Right. Yeah, no, man, that's absolutely well said, man. And let's scroll back up to that thing because I definitely has a little bit of relish to that
Yeah, man.
these
Put some
ideas as
colors
far
on
yeah. So one of the things that polarity for me definitely helped me understand, especially when it says it explains the old paradoxes that have perplexed so many, is because we're trying to find God. We're trying to find these higher beings, and we say that they're unknowable, and and we're trying to see things that don't necessarily exist. But this is where polarity comes in because we exist. You know what I mean? And then when you start to understand that this is kind of showing you how that we're all one and how the one has to manifest as many just because of the principle of polarity. You know what I mean? So you can reach a
facts.
level to where you could be in the middle. You could be reaching a level what we call NPC, where you be so far allegedly cold. You can reach the highest enlightenment of so-called God, which comes with its own advantages. But at all states, you were still the same thing, just
Yeah.
varying in a degree. And it also takes me back to one of the first times that I hopped on when you had a few other fellas on here. You had one of your other guys on here, and we were talking about just the idea of who gets to define certain things and how I wasn't so anxious to say how I'm living is righteous or not righteous, because I understand that everything is and everything isn't at the same time. All truths are but half truths, and these half truths are why, because your truth is your subjective truth, because the objectivity of truth is ironically and paradoxically subjective. So even when we say there's an objective truth, there's a paradox to that, because no matter what, all truths are but half truths, and you could take a truth that is false for one, but true for the other, and then they'll get the underlying effect. Why? All truths are truths, and all paths are valid. You know what I mean? So when you understand this, it allows you to say what I am doing is righteous, and what that person is doing is not righteous, because you understand somehow even the unrighteousness is me. It's one thing. It's not really split into two different things. It's just I'm viewing it from a different perspective, which is then thus giving it the illusion that it is something other than self. Go on in, my brother.
I would say that there's one clause in that, according to the Kabbalion, the all.
Mm-hmm.
The all would be the one thing that doesn't fall within this, even though everything else does. According to the book, is what I'm saying, not necessarily my opinion. But
Right.
yes, I agree with you on everything else. You got the floor.
Right. So, you know, and even when we talk about the all, and once again, this is just, you know, that's the beauty of even when I first met you, you know, I'm willing to honor people's truths because I realize we all have the ability to own our half truths. But even in your most strongest of opinion, even speaking for myself, is only but a half truth, because this thing that we think we can pin down is actually truthfully unpin downable. But in order to create the reality that we're both co-creating, we have to be able to believe in this lie to be able to find the truth in order for us to it's false images, you know what I mean? So it's like once again, this is why it says the paradox that has perplexed. And I think that this principle, most time when we're thinking about it, we're thinking about the extreme and the cold, but we're not getting down and I'm always trying to control it through my screen. Can we like scroll down a little bit more so I can see more of the paragraph? Just to kind of like we did last week, just to kind of just let it simmer and let us not try to be in a pace or a rush, just kind of sit with the verbiage. But it said it explains the old paradoxes that have perplexed many, which have been stated. Thesis and antithesis are identical in nature but different in degree. Opposites are the same, differing only in degree, and then the pair may be reconciled and extremes meet. So everything is and isn't at the same time. So when I see this, right, I understand that once again, I understand that there's multiple versions of us that we're going to be. We're going to have the moment of us that understands, and then that person is going to have to contradict it's himself in order to, you know, be able to have one sort of another opposite belief system, you know what I mean? So basically what I'm getting at is that anytime that you stand against one thing and you judge something that's like it, you know what I mean? Well, I'm good, he's bad. I'm evil, he's good. Just understand that you're not describing two things. And this is where, you know, I get into conflict with people because they want me to split God up. They want me to, you know, split up source, say this part is source, that part is source. But I am a student. I am an alchemist. So you're asking me to go against my very fabric of being, even these immutable principles, that even if you're trying to tell me that that thing is other than self, I know the truth that is really not. I might choose to be particularly looking at it from this particular perspective for contrast, for, you know, expansion. But I have to lean on my own understanding because to a degree, I don't think that the truth will ever fully come outside of you, meaning that I don't think that you'll ever meet anyone outside of you that will believe everything that you're believing 100%. So you have to save a little bit of God for yourself and say, you know what, I might come across a lot of people that believe in me similarity, but I have to know God for myself. I have to know God based off my own understanding. And based off my own understanding, there is no such thing as righteousness. There is no such thing as treacherous. This is, in fact, the same being that can be reconciled under the polarity, under the rules of polarity. So just know, ironically, when we are creating separation in things, paradoxically, you can also say, I am that I am, you know, and ultimately, even though I'm saying that because I do prefer in this experience to live a more righteous life, my way is not the way because my truth is only a half truth. You know what I mean? And I'm not willing to say, if you put me under perjury, an investigation to condemn a thing outside of myself, because I would say the thing exists. So I cannot condemn existence. I can say I don't prefer it, but I can never look in existence and say, you know what, you shouldn't be. And not only shouldn't you be, I don't believe in a conditional God. So you must now be transmuted into something else because I think you shouldn't exist in the state that I found you in. I honor the full law of the polarity, the principle of polarity, and understand that everything that seems dual is in fact not dual. It is one thing. And it's my particular understanding right now that I'm choosing to look at it different just for the contrast, but I have a dual mind. I say, okay, yes, Ferdinand, I know you're Ferdinand, right? And I like that. I don't want you to say, oh, we're all one. No, I don't want to talk to myself. I came on here to talk to you. So can you have an ego and you separate yourself from me and you be you and I be me while still knowing that it's not that you're another me, you are me, even in all your so-called different features. That's only the illusion of me, but the soul of you, the face of you, we are identical in nature.
Breeze.
Yes. So this is why I love we got into this book, because once again, and I'm yes, I like books, but like one time I was explaining my philosophy to a young lady, and she said, well, I read in this person's book, and she thinks she still believes in false God. So she believes in some other man that she respects wrote something in the book. Well, it must be true. She's not willing to submit to the idea that I know God intimately. And I don't care who you quote or who you reference. That man cannot mediate God to me. You know what I mean? And I'm choosing to believe, like the Muslims say, in that one God. And I'm choosing to believe that that God is unconditional. You know what I mean? So even though I participate in the polarity just for the fun and the contrast, I know I don't go too far in trying to separate, even if it's the most heinous thing, from myself and from my being, because then that would now put me to where I have to have two creator gods. Then that would now have to put me on a polarity where my polarity is right, and now I'm in a state of judgment to where the opposite that I'm wearing that's triggering me, I'm saying that's wrong, and then that should be transmuted into this, versus staying as it is and just honoring the immutable principles that is. And sometimes it does go beyond my understanding, by my empathy. I don't make sense of it, but that's the paradox of it.
He over here cooking. Cooking. You know, I really appreciate that, man. I really appreciate that measure. You know, when I think about the principle of polarity, it brings me to the zodiac. You know, I'm when I think about the principle of polarity, I think about it from a perspective. I think about holistic, right? So I think about Sister Myra Moss, right? So Sister Myra Moss, she says, you know, listen, I don't look at the zodiac from a perspective of 12 individual signs anymore. I look at it from a perspective of 6 axis of energy, right? Ultimately, it still is one, right? One zodiac. But it brings Aquarius and Leo into one, right? It brings Scorpio and Taurus into one, right? Cancer and Capricorn into one, and the list goes on, right? And then when you start looking at the zodiac from that type of a perspective, then you can start to also apply the principle of polarity, right? And then you start.
Let's get it.
And then you can start to get some really special effects out of tuning and sliding those virtues, right, on what the melody is that's put out space, right? So you can do some very special things using this using the principle of polarity. And but what I will say is this, right? Now I should have put this disclaimer out on the very first episode. Please understand that these 7 principles, this is spiritual. Okay. So Sister Myra Moss, one of the things that she says is there's only one sin. Okay. And I'm quoting her directly. There's only one sin. That is misusing power at the spiritual level. Right. This is real power, what we're talking about. These 7 principles opens up things inside of you that most people are not able to truly explain. Right. So when you have this power that you awaken inside of you, use it for what you deem to be righteous, right? But your spirit will guide you. Your spirit will let you know what that is, right? But whatever you do, don't misuse these lessons, because you will pay a price that I'm not able to even tell you what it is, but I guarantee it'll be much more than what you could lose in the stock market or in crypto.
And let's just stay here, my brother, because once again, the so-called spirit, the Akashic, whatever you want to call it, is just streaming in, you know, more understanding just by this principle. Because a lot of people are having, and it's crazy because it's so-called esoteric people that's trying to tell me I'm God when I'm like Christ trying to take full power for it, and they trying to stone me, and I'm like, yo, doesn't your good book say ye are not gods? Like, what you know, what is going on? You know what I mean? So, go ahead,
I can dive in on that. So when it comes down to that, I think we got to look at each of these doctrines for what they are. We got to look at who authored them. We got to look at who their higher power was on this earthly realm. You know, all of those things start to help us to figure it out, right? But one of the things that I've told people time and time again, I'm gonna quickly explain this thing. I'm giving it back to you.
Okay, no problem, my brother.
Every single doctrine out there, I highly recommend we read them. Every one of them, no matter what they are, all of the religions, everything, I recommend you read them, right? And this is what you do first: develop purity. Because when you develop purity, what happens is you become the truth. The world, this entire existence works like a mirror, right? So if you become the truth, what happens is no matter what it is you read, no matter which doctrine you put in front of you, no matter which dictionary, no matter what it is, you will easily see the truth when everybody else is just reading words.
No, that's a fact. You read this damn water bottle, and you be like, "Yo, it's on here too." I swear to God, you know what I mean? Yeah, but you know, and I love it because when I get certain pushback, you know, we understand that the constriction and restriction is really, you know, expansion. You know what I mean? So, you know, I love when I'm able to, you know, get the feedback of tension or pushback, because you know what it does is just helps me. And one of my mentor, he always tells me like to refine, define, and get real explicit. So yeah, we definitely can stay right, go down here, and I'll continue reading, then I'll add what I wanted to say on top of it. To illustrate, heat and cold, though opposites, are really the same thing. The difference consisting merely of degree of the same thing. Look at the thermometer, which Ferdinand talked about, and see if you can discover where heat terminates and cold begin. There is no such thing as absolute. This is where we got to really understand, because when I say this to people, it gets their panties in a bunch. You know what I mean? No matter how much truth you think that you're saying, there's, as soon as you speak in an absolute, you've lost a certain essence, and now it's ego and vanity kind of kicking in, versus that balance. So this is where sometimes, you know, I have conversations where I'll be strong in my truth, but then I give it disclaimer. Well, you know, it's if you want to, you know what I mean? Because I was like, damn, I was strong, and I then negated, because I don't want to speak. As soon as I find myself speaking in absolute, the other balance kicks in. Like, hey, you speaking in absolute. So I like to give the disclaimer and then go back to my absolute. It's my absolute, but the truth is there is no absolute. So, you know, that's important. So there's no such thing as absolute heat or absolute. I can't see the screen. Yeah, there we go. You straight. Yeah, this is cool. Absolute cold. The two terms heat and cold simply indicate varying degrees of the same thing, and that same thing which manifests as heat and cold is merely a form, variety, and a rate. Remember, I told you the first three principles control the last four, in a rate of vibration. So heat and cold are simply two poles of that which we humans projecting words onto things that we truly don't understand. You know what I mean? And the phenomena attended and thereupon are manifestations of the principle of polarity, right? Let me keep going. The same principle manifests in the case. This is my argument. Stop trying to give me a devil God and give me one God that does both. In the case of light and darkness, which are the same thing, the difference consists of varying degrees between the two poles of phenomena. Where does darkness leave off and where does light begin? Appreciate you, my brother. What is the difference between large and small, between hard and soft, between black and white, between sharp and dull, between noise and quiet, and so on and so on? I don't even need the rest. So that's what I'm trying to tell people when they send me on a seek for damn God. Tell me, when does God end and where does man begin? You know what I mean? Why must I keep searching for something that I already in? And why are you trying to tell me, you know what I mean, that is there and that is here, when I'm trying to tell you what you're looking at? You're describing that thing. And it depends on how I'm particularly, you know, even viewing myself in a particular moment. You know what I mean? So these polarities, these principles is where now that finally, when I understand, I have empathy towards the people who I contrast with, because I once too believed how you thought. I once too thought holier than thou. I once too thought that there's it has to be some sort of observer person that's counting my to-do just in case. So I'm trying to win a favor. But now I'm starting to understand that all of these things that we consider good, bad, let's go this way, that these are all human projections and fabrications just for the experience of the experience. And there is nothing inherently bad in anything. All things is good, as God described in the so-called Bible when he created, and on the sixth day and on the seventh day, he need not do nada. You know, he didn't say it was good once Ra raises his kundalini or once Ferdinand eats 1,000. You know what I'm saying? He did not say it was, things are already good. But see, the thing is that we are so uncomfortable with our own duality, with our own perfections and imperfected self, right? And we're so allured by this false God that doesn't exist, that only sits on one polarity, which might be pure love or pure happiness. Anytime that we experience the poles of reality, we discredit the God within ourselves. And I'm just asking why? Why do we have to discredit the humanness? And why can't I look at myself as a man and say, whoa, that's God? Why could he look at the extremes of light and darkness that this thing can conjure within itself? You know what I mean? And look how I can even think upon myself. So you're looking for God in the man uses God in action every single day and does not even understand his power. And right, Since he doesn't understand the principle of polarity, he thinks that he is not divine in the state that he finds himself in, and he has to chase divinity, which then creates more poles. It creates more poles. Yes. And then he's trying to tell you extremes meet. You have to meet these extremes. Yes, it's an extreme to be God. Yes, it's an extreme to be man. Yes, it's even more extreme to say I am that I am, both of them at the same time. You know what I mean? But these extremes they don't have to meet. So you see I was speaking of absolute and I caught myself. I caught myself because there is no absolute. If you want to believe in what you want to believe in, great. But we do have these so-called books, which I love, but I don't even have to reference the books to understand that the wholeness and the oneness, the one is many and the many is one. And the last thing I'll say before we move on is that I'm telling you, and I know it sounds blasphemous. I know it sounds blasphemous to people because I've been called all type of names, but God ain't better than you. He's not. God is not better than you. You are both matches, the exact same thing. No one can judge the other. That so-called God only exists because you exist. He did not create you. You did not create it. Y'all are both the alpha and the omega under various degrees. And if you stare at your face long enough, that face that you're looking for, and as the Bible said, the Bible tells you, how did he tell you will recognize him? Him in capital letters. It says that when you see him, you shall know him because you shall look like him. You know what I mean? Even in Genesis, it keeps telling you about man being made in his image or in his mind or within his own self over and over again. It kept telling you that this Christ or this Lord, he's not going to kind of look like you. He's going to be you and look in the same reflection that you're seeing. It's not going to be someone else's reflection that you see and you finally recognize the God within. It's going to be yourself. And then you're going to realize that the prophecy is correct. You know what I mean? Because who has a mind? Who has the ability to make things in his own mind? Who has the ability to make his voice, his frequency, his cells vibe? You will realize the whole time that they have not been talking about no mystery or no spook God. They've been talking about man. They've been talking about you.
He cooking up some gumbo over there.
I'm just saying, stop me if I'm wrong, brother. Because like I said, I understand it. It feels blasphemous to look at God and say, you ain't better than me. You know what I mean? But I'm not even trying to be black. I'm just honoring. Finally, it took me 20 years.
Let me touch that. You know, so when we touch something like God and the perspective on what God is, there's a lot of different perspectives out there. I would say that we would need to take a look at Western psychological conditioning. Right. We would need to look at the food supply. We would need to look at the entertainment, and we would need to look at the values and the traditions. Right. All of these things start to tell us a story. Right. They start to help us to understand why certain suggestions are so powerful on the mind. Well, what we know about the law of suggestion, and this is my personal definition of it, is we become what we experience in repetition, right? So when we think about how strong a thought is on a group of people, that would be directly related to frequency of suggestion, right? And this can also start to bring us into the polarity, right, of material versus spiritual, right? So if you got a group of people who are believing in monotheism, you know, maybe a smaller amount of people who believe in polytheism here in America, but the majority of them, maybe they believe in monotheism, right? Well, how did you get them there? How did that group of people get to that point if they never practiced any of this prior to, let's say, 500 years ago? Well, this would be a systematic approach to controlling people for a purpose.
Nice. And then listen, man, I'm ready to get into the rhythm because once again, you can't stop the message. The haters out there, and I understand it's me pushed out hating on myself for fun because I enjoy it. Me and Ferdinand enjoy the smoke, so we got to have fire starters somewhere. You know what I mean? But I challenge, and you know how Billy Carson was putting out messages and people came. I want the smoke. I want you to come with your belief. I want you to come because most of you are going to come with a God outside of me. Even if you don't say it, the reason why you're going to say he's outside of me, because you're going to say he's conditional. And you're going to say that there's X amount of things that need to be met in order for the face to be revealed. And then I'm just going to bring a book like the Kabbalion and the 7 Hermetic Principles and just smack you all around, with it. And then you're going to have to choose to whether you truly believe in this unconditional God or this conditional God. And I'm going to just ask you, be hot or cold. Don't be lukewarm. Because if you lukewarm, I don't see any type of smoke that you're going to be able to have. And the reason why I don't want smoke, I just see what you guys are out there teaching. And none of you are teaching, not say none, because that's an absolute, but a lot of you, most of you are not teaching acceptance and wholeness. You're treated as the condition. You're treating all these other variations first. Not saying that, once again, I've been plant-based for 13 years. I'll be doing these things too. But now I'm understanding that these are enhancements. The truth of the truth of the truth is I already am, and I've already been, and I've already was, and I've just been so-called trick bag out of that understanding.
Peep question number 4 in the Moorish Science Temple of America questionnaire.
Who made you? Allah.
You see question number 4?
Where is the nearest place we can meet him? In the chair. Come on, man. Yeah. So all I ask, right, is just like when I debate Christian, I said, just debate me on the book. Don't do none of the added relish, because half the stuff that y'all talk about is not even in the book. You know what I mean? So let's just keep it to confined, because then I have to battle what the book says, then your dual understanding of it. And then I have to battle most people that they want to keep trying to put God outside of me, and they want to put him under a condition to invalidate my godness inside of me. And I just don't understand, how can you, if I'm saying I believe in a God of one, so no matter if you think what I'm doing is light or dark, it's a God of one, and I believe a God of unconditional love. You know what I mean? So you cannot find me in any state, and then I'm telling you these are my gods, you know what I mean? And then you try to persuade me. Now you can try to persuade me and say, hey, just check it out because it's fun. I'm all for that. Let's check it out, because that's all we're here to do, which is peep in the thing. But don't tell me that God is at the end of that rainbow, because then you're going to have me on a seek and search mission for something that I've already found. You know what I mean? And I understand that it's up to me, because I believe personally that you'll never meet anyone outside of you that's going to give you God. It's someone, like you just said, in your own heart, and each man and woman have their own heart. You know what I mean? But, and this is not for the regulars, the Christian I already know, but this is for the people who so-called are teaching and preaching esoteric. I just want more disclaimers to go out when you're speaking in absolutes, and when you're so sure that you define God, double check it, because the true essence of God is unknowable, unseeable, and any definition that we place is just our lazy attempt just to have contrast within the experience that we're in. The truth is God is everyone and everywhere at all times. You know what I mean?
If we touch, let's say for this realm that we're in, right? Absolutes within this realm, the golden ratio, that's one. I would even say that that's the only one that we need to touch when we think about the type of absolutes. Let's say within the realm. Okay, once we start getting out of dimensions and realms, things could be slightly different, right?
And you know why they could be? Because the moment that we can think one thing, the opposite is always that's the unconditionality and the beautiful. And this is why, because we are, and I agree. I like this realm is built off of that golden ratio. So right. I love the realm that I see that's built off the golden ratio. And I don't even want to, I can imagine, because I understand the laws of polarity. So I understand, right, how this is a truth within this realm, but it's still a half truth, because I know that the moment that I've been able to look and define and perceive something, I'm not really perceiving it as it really is. I'm never perceiving anything under its true nature. It is an illusory Maya, because we can't not escape the Maya, only have our feeble attempts on what we feel like we're escaping. Even when we're designing quantum computers and we're doing all these amazing things, just know it is still a half truth, because there is another truth that can supersede that truth, and then you can build a new world model that may or may not even make sense to us. So that's the beauty of it. You know, when you start to understand of it, you can stand on an absolute, but still give yourself the ability to have a paradox, and you can reconcile the two. To the average man, you might seem like you're a walking contradiction, but then the man that calls me a contradiction, I say, man, you must not really understand the universe, because the universe is contradictory. As soon as you think that you have your finger on it, it slips away and it becomes something else. But it's so infinite and it's so vast that you can build a truth. And I'll say this again, I ain't even finished saying it, but you could build a truth on a lie. That's how amazing this so-called God is. That's how beautiful that you can build a whole truth based on a so-called lie, based on something that's not empirically or absolutely true, but you have free will, you have condition. And if you want to believe that this lie is going to be, if I even tell people, they say karma is a belief system. If this so-called, how did the so-called people in power been in power for thousands, where's their boomerang? You know what I mean? Even that can be superseded, can be, if you understand how the pendulum swing, can be subverted. You know what I mean? Yes, almost, as Morpheus says, some can be bent, some can be broken. You know what I mean? So karma only works if you're doing deeds and you have guilt, because you don't get back what you necessarily do. You get about what you feel about what you've done. Your guilt, your shame, this is what's boomeranging that thing back, you know what I'm saying, to you. Yeah, I mean, so you, and or they, people say, well, the golden thing, you know, do as you want others to do for you. No, what if you're a psychopath and you like murder for, you know, don't do unto me as you want to do. And these things are, you know, laws that we kind of say, but this is why you got to dive into books like the Kabbalah, because it'll get you to understand it is, but it ain't part of life. And then that's, to me, when you can start getting a little bit smoking, once you're able to so-called live in the truth and get the benefits like we are or you are from your truth, and say, but this ain't truth though. You know what I mean? At the same time, while you're living it, and you're not, just because you say that it's not, doesn't mean that you're going to choose something different. No, I'm choosing what I'm choosing, but somehow I empirically know this is just my truth. Now, is it someone that can drink, you know, a Pepsi all day and become the healthiest person in the world? It might be, because he might have such a truth in his paradigm that his reality allows him to do something that should not make sense. But I wouldn't say that it makes sense, because I understand where we live in. Everything it is and it isn't, and it's a paradox. Some things that shouldn't be, it just is.
I think you hit on something really important, man. You know, you were touching on how there can be a lie that's created and it can be made to be the truth.
Yeah. Well, you got to think about it. Just to throw back at you, you can ping back the Sophia, the Yabadov. This whole reality was created of her chasing a false light. If you want to study Gnosticism, you know what I mean? And it created the shadow world. We think we're in the thing of light, but we're not. We're in a projection. We're in the after effect, and it's taking on. This is why Lucifer, the real light bearer, I mean, we go on other deep, but it's supposed to come through, because we've been chasing a false light. But this false light is creating this entire beautiful world that we see. So how can a false light create something that I'm enjoying so much? You're looking at the power of God. You know what I mean?
That's gonna go over a lot of people's head.
Listen, man, they might well just strap in.
I appreciate that, man, because I tell people all the time. I'm like, yo, where you go to see God? And then, you know, they got whatever way that they go to see God, right? Well, I tell them, hey, whenever I want to go see God, I get hop on the podcast, or I go stand in the mirror in my bathroom, you know, look in the mirror in my bathroom, and I can see God, right? Because like you were saying, God is within. And long before I became a member, before I proclaimed as a Moorish American, this is information that I had been teaching for the longest time, because that little small voice within, you don't hear that little small voice without. You hear it within. So, you know, these are different.
And even just the ping pong back to it. So once again, when Jesus came to the people, and they said, well, the Messiah has all these things that he's supposed to fulfill. They said he's supposed to rebuild the kingdom in X amount of times. And Jesus is like, well, nope, that's the old way. You are the kingdom. You know what I mean? He kept trying to reference back to man, and they could not accept that man could be this magnificent thing, but they don't understand polarity. Maybe they just didn't have it.Maybe Jesus, once again, and this is what Aleister Crowley talked about. He said that Jesus didn't speak in parable because he just was so smart, because he was a lame, not a layman's man, but he was, before his awakening and his thing, he lived as a carpenter, as a stone. So he didn't have to work with words. So his language was limited versus like the Pharisees or the scribes or the people who worked with words. So it wasn't that he was just so smart. Let me speak in parables. He's not like a Ferdinand and I know that might be blasphemous to some, that has this large dictation. We have this vernacular. We have this way that we study all the Jesus. He wasn't a reader. He was someone who was getting hit with information and knowledge and being able to oratate. It was only certain segments of people who even was able to quill or to pen or to put in paper. And that's who he was battling against, the paper keepers. He came in with the spirit of truth, though. You know what I mean? In establishing what he called, which I understand to the so-called Jews, he said it's a new covenant. And they like, well, you don't got no paper. Like he's not just trust me, bro. That's what Christ, that's basically what he did in the book. He hit them with the trust me, bro. They told him, yo, Abraham, Isaac, all my fathers know, all my fathers, forefathers, fathers believed in this law and been waiting on this Messiah. And that was going to be, how are you coming in the middle of it and telling me, this is why, you know, this is another chapter, but it's kind of all related, that it's, you know, it's still in that Bible preaching about two gods. It's preaching about an older God, and then it's preaching about another God that did not go and follow the same way. And this is where some people, you know, like a Billy Carson might say that Jesus incarnated as or Tahuti or Thoth reincarnated, because when you look at the teachings of Jesus, it's not Yahweh, like it's really Thoth like. You know what I mean? So this, you know, this is where, you know, the establishment of the new principles. And then he already said that he went to go study amongst the hermetics. Jesus was a hermit. John the Baptist was a hermit. You know what I mean? So these were basically what we're talking to you about now. These were people who were studying the universal laws, and then they were doing, as Ferdinand, he always said, the bringer of truth. It's just the bringing back to the people. You know what I mean? But yet we just have to understand, man, that I mean, we don't have to understand, see the absolutes, but you know, I would implore you to understand that the power that is you now and the power that is you today, you know what I mean, is going to supersede any other version that you think tomorrow, which never comes, is going to bring you. The awareness that the all that you are today, even your imperfections. We look at darkness, we look at negativity, we look at other side of the yin, and we're trying to avoid it just to stay in the yang. And we know that's not balanced. Extremes must be met. So when I have, excuse me, a little bit of a foul mouth, to me, that's me fulfilling the prophecy. You know what I'm saying? Why should I speak to you and just all righteous and love? No, I'm going to make these extremes meet. I'm going to take both sides of it. I'm going to mix in that higher spiritual, and you think it should be your definition of pure is not cursing, not thing. And I'm saying, no, that don't sound like God to me. God sounds like he probably cursed. You know what I mean? Say some shit that, yeah. So, you know, I'm not even trying to embody anyone else. I'm just embracing myself. It just so happens to, when I'm embracing both sides of myself, that they say this is the way. This is the reconciliation of the extreme polarities. I'm not trying to present myself as always this. I'm not trying to present, I'm just presenting myself as me, which just happens to be a balance, you know, of the two, you know. But the next principle, man, is really going to bring some of this other stuff home on what we're talking about. And let's go, brother. It's all yours.
All right. So we got the principle of rhythm. Everything flows out and in. Everything has its tides. All things rise and fall. The pendulum swing manifests in everything. The measure of the swing to the right is the measure of the swing to the left. Rhythm compensates. The Kabbalion. This principle embodies the truth that everything there is. This principle embodies the truth that in everything there is manifested a measured motion to and fro, a flow and inflow, a swing backward and forward, a pendulum-like movement, a tide-like ebb and flow, a high tide and low tide between the two poles which exist in accordance with the principle of polarity described a moment ago. So, you know, I'm gonna just lightly touch this, and I'm about to hand it to you because you've been cooking, man. I gotta give it to you, right? But you know, when I think of the principle of rhythm, one of the things that comes to mind is always the EKG machine at the hospital, right? Measuring the rise and fall of the pumping of the blood from the heart, right? Well, this is one way to look at the principle of rhythm. Another way to look at the principle of rhythm is the flow of money, right? Another way to look at the principle of rhythm is the flow of your life, of how you are moving throughout every year with the things that you're doing, the rise and fall of your bank account, right? The principle of rhythm manifests in everything, right? Everything. And it's a pendulum that's moving, right? And you can be in the way, get smacked, right? Or you can be out of the way, or you could be sitting on the pendulum.
No, that's a fact, man. Listen, man, Ferdinand, you don't know what you did, got me on here, man. You're gonna have me breaking all type of blasphemous rules, man. But you reading it, and while you reading it, you know, sources just, you know, using me as a medium, and it's just having little. I hear all these little mini conversations going on. Not even one. It's like when I'm on a shroom trip and somehow, normally I may only process 3 or 4 thoughts. Now I'm processing 1,000 thoughts parallel to each other. But just to go back to the page, man, just to kind of just to parse that, So for me, when I'm reading these principles right now, and what's on my particular spirit, my absolute spirit is that these immutable laws are describing man. When I read these laws, I don't hear God. At least how the ways that they taught us God. You know what I mean? Because to me, God sits on one end of the pendulum. You know what I mean? At least of the way that they describe it. He's all loving, he's all good, he's all high, and then they sit us at the other end, the opposite end of the ledger pendulum, right? But even when we go and scroll a little bit back up, let me see, make sure that I got the top. Okay, yeah, that is good. So I'm just gonna no, you good. You go back down. I'm just gonna reread the part that you read, just to add a little bit more relish to it.
Sure.
The principle embodies the truth that in everything there is a manifested and a measured motion to and fro, a flow inward, a swing backward and forward, a pendulum-like movement, a tide-like ebb. So to me, and it said according with the principle of polarity, to me, that's describing me. That's describing my psychotic ass. I'm flowing this. I'm flowing this way. This is describing my mind. This is describing God in action as it happens within inside of me. I'm like, yo, this is what goes on. These principles is what goes on inside of me. And then once again, the top 3 govern the bottom 2 that we're covering now. So it's still describing the same source that it described in the first principle. And it's showing you how it moves through everything. So when you're in a good season of life, guess what? Source. Bad season of life, guess what? Source. False, everything in between is no opposite God. It's source doing a natural flow. So for those of us, once again, our counterparts, where they always tell me this is one of my, I'm gonna say is a turn off because I understand it's just in their nature. But when a woman tells me that I just wants to be happy, I'm like, do you know where you at? You're not in a place of happiness. Are you kidding me? You only want to sit in this natural world on one scale of the poles. And when you go through the natural rhythm of life, you're going to now be mad at everybody around you because life wasn't able to obtain and sustain something that is unsustainable, which is a consistent state, versus saying that life is going to throw everything in between. You know what I mean? It's going to go up. It's going to go down. It's going to take me. And then when it's happened, you have that stoicism, amor fati attitude, because now you know it's nothing wrong. What do you mean? How is it wrong when we're reading the laws? We're reading how they work. We're reading how everything has to have a shift. It has to go hot. It has to go cold. It has to experience various different degrees. So when you're trying to tell me that I'm trying to get this to this perfected state, I call bull SHIT. You know what I mean? I don't believe it, because when I'm reading the thing, I say, how am I supposed to stay in one state when this thing is not, it should just describe to me one state. It shouldn't tell me these extremes. It shouldn't tell me about the poles. And then after it gives me the polarity, it gives me vibration. Then it gives me polarity. Then it gives me rhythm. The order matters right through it. So then after it's creating the structure, then it's telling me how the structure within it moves. It's creating the 4 walls. You know what I mean? Mentalism, correspondence, vibration, and then polarity. And then now it's showing me when you have this box, this is how it moves. So not only are there poles, there's a law that makes sure that it goes through all the poles. So not only is it poles, but there's laws in pendulum that whether you want to or not, you're going to go through the BS.
I gotta put a different. I gotta put a picture up on the screen real quick. I got you. You got to see this, and then we'll come back to the book in just a second, because it relates to the principle of rhythm. And let me open it up, and then that'll I can share it.
And while he's doing that, mind you, this book told you once you learn the 7, all secrets, meaning that there's not a phenomena that you can describe that you won't understand what's happening. And this is where we're and once it's not about me being a end all be all, but god damn it, I ain't studied this stuff 20 years to sit up here and talk feeble or to talk. You know what I mean? I didn't do all that.
Ain't no point in sugarcoating anything at this point. We got Uranus coming into Gemini, July 2025. At this point, whoever got Band-Aids on, we just ripping them off, right? But the reason why I put this picture up on the screen is because it relates to the principle of rhythm. And if you don't mind, Ra, because you really into the getting money, help the people understand what they're looking at.
Man, listen, this is, to me, it looks just like the charts that I follow every day when I'm trading. And then you can just understand the ebbs and the flows. It almost looks like a song. It almost looks like a music. And then what you see is, once again, this is with Ferdinand, when he talks about the astrology, and then he's talking about astrology and the mathematics. And even me, when I say that we live in a computational, how are you supposed to show me this? And then I say think that we don't live in a computational universe. You know what I'm trying to say? Yes, where it does introduce certainty, but like I was trying to tell my boy earlier, and shout out to him, Lou, if he's still watching. He put up Thriver earlier. 3VA means Thriver in our own little lane. He put up Thriver earlier. You know what I mean? But like I told him, yes, on the micro, it might seem like it's a whole bunch of uncertainty, but when you zoom out and you look at the macro, you see like, oh shit, because he was asking me about trading, whether it's gambling. I said, I used to feel like it's gambling. Then I got enough data. In the beginning, I didn't have enough data. But after getting so much data, I was able to see in contrast, like, this thing it might sound crazy, but it's moving with the predictable pattern. So what we're seeing here, it looks like that there's been certain periods that's been tracked since 1927 and all the way through the current times. And he said, I'm still here, my brother. Shout out to Lou. All the way through the current times. And as Ferdinand is trying to show you, I think you talked about being in a relationship between a certain date, but there are certain times and certain seasons for everything. There's a season to make money. There's a season to lose money. You have to know which season that you're in. And then when you're in the season of making money, you have to not remember that no matter how nice you are, there's going to be a season where you don't have. So remember that. Remember when you're getting gander from the goose, that this goose is going to probably hit a period of time, which I'm going to be doing. My dad told me this. He said, listen, you could be doing everything right, but if it's not your season, it won't work. And then you get into your season, and the same thing you was doing when it wasn't working, you're doing the same thing. Now everything worked. But then he told me, my dad's 73, but no, he said this, there's going to come a time where it's going to go away again. So you have to remember that. He's showing me this, and according to the principle of rhythm, and just with the diagram, that even money works these ways. You know what I mean? Even money works these ways, to where there's rhythm, there's a time and place for everything. And if you can just understand it and you can see how the pendulum swing, you'll give yourself, and you talked about this before, even knowing certain days why astrology is so important, because you might have signed a business deal, you don't know that is the most horrible time according to maybe your birth chart or alignment, or whether the planets in virtue. You might think it's hogwash, but just bring up back that image. I bet you if you decided to do birth charts or a thing according to that image, you'll see the correlation between America's poverty and non-poverty, or whether people was doing well, but they're going to tell you that there's no rhyme and reason to it. You know what I mean? So that's at least how I interpret it. I hope that was according to something that you hope.
No, I appreciate what you just brought. And part of the reason why I wanted to put this picture up on the screen for our audience is so that they
hold me down real quick, man. I'm gonna go to the bathroom real quick, but I can
no problem. Do your thing, brother. I wanted to show this picture on the screen so that everyone could see that there is rhythms that are taking place in more than just the way you get up every day, go to work, and breakfast and all that, or how you live throughout the year, right? There's a rhythm to these things, right? There's also a rhythm with money. There's a rhythm with a lot of different things, right? So when we take a look at this, we see that rhythm. We see a peak in 2019. Then we see a major low in 2023, right? Then we see it come back up a little bit, 2026. But by 2032, we see it hitting rock bottom, right? But this is all the rhythm of the pendulum swinging, okay, right? And this is one of the main principles within within the Kabbalion, right? So let me go ahead and put the Kabbalion back up on the screen real quick, and we're gonna touch that again, all right? Because we got some good stuff happening there.
Oh yeah, we just getting. So we got company too. We got the driver Lou watching. Yeah, we got company too.
Yeah, we got some company. All right, so let's hop back in this, okay? Let's see. Where do we read to? Where did we stop at? There is always an action and a reaction, an advance and a retreat, a rising and a sinking. This is in the affairs of the universe. Suns, worlds, men, animals, mind, energy, and matter. This law is manifest in the creation and destruction of worlds, in the rise and fall of nations, in the life of all things, and finally in the mental states of man. And it is with this latter that the Hermetists find the understanding of the principle most important. The Hermetists have grasped this principle, finding its universal application, and have also discovered certain means to overcome its effects in themselves by the use of the appropriate formulas and methods. Now, keep in mind this last sentence that I just read. I was just talking about how when this pendulum is swinging. Let me bring my brother over. There we go. When this pendulum is swinging, you can be in different types of places, right? But the masters, they can position themselves to be out of the way of the pendulum. Sometimes you might be out of the way of the pendulum because you're on the pendulum. You're sitting on it. Or you might just, know how to, maneuver yourself. You over here, you bobbing and you weaving. You know what you're doing, right? Well, that's what the masters do. But what are they doing to master these things? It is mastery of knowing thyself. There is magnitudal levels to that. Okay. This is something that not every leader is explaining very well. But the reality that we need to understand is these principles work in magnitudal levels. One of the things that we haven't really gone into within the Kabbalion is the shout out shout out, brother, appreciate it. One of the things we haven't really gone into is the different levels. So within the three great planes, and this is just a little piece, then we coming right back to rhythm. Within the three great planes of spiritual, mental, and physical, we have 7 subplanes. Now, some of those subplanes have their own 7 subplanes, right? So like the ethereal plane, 7 subplanes to its subplane, right? And as we rise, we eventually become the God. Well, what is that? I would say that that's knowing thyself while in a state of purity, right? And then we're gonna go ahead back to regularly scheduled programming.
Regular scheduled programming. Yeah, man. Listen, man. I'll definitely start cooking with this. So, and just to pick up where you left off, I'll just read the last little bit. So the Hermesis, right? Because that is important, right? Has grasped the principle, finding its universal application, have discovered certain means to overcome this. Remember, I tell people all the time karma's a myth. They be looking at I'm like, listen, I'm trying to tell you, it's a myth. You know what I mean? If you believe that you're under that law, you will be subjected. But there are people who know how to remove or to push themselves out of its grasp. You know what I mean? So this is where this is coming in to further confirm. So the principle finding its universal application have also discovered certain means to overcome its effects in themselves by the use of appropriate formulas and methods. Why you use principles against principles, laws against laws. They apply the mental law of neutralization. You know what I mean? Neutralize. That's how powerful you are. You know what I mean? They cannot annul the principle, right? Or cause it to cease. So this is like high science. This is why this is not a book you get through. This is something even myself, I'm relearning it as going through it with you guys, because there is a and this is where, once again, speaking absolute truth, but whoever, whatever, this is when I start to understand that this was sent to me by me somehow, because it's so perfect and it's so aligned to my frequency that, you know what I mean? It had to be sent to me by me through other means and mediums. So they cannot annul the principle or cause it to cease in operation, but they have learned how to grasp its effects upon itself to a certain degree, depending on the mastery of the principle. They have learned how to use it instead of being used by it. And this, in similar methods, consists the art of the Hermetist. The principle of Hermetics polarizes himself at the point at which he desires to rest. So this is, once again, let me repeat that, because this is high science that they're talking about right now. Excuse me. The master of Hermetics polarizes himself at the point at which he desires. So we got to understand that's his key words. What do they mean by polarizing? To me, and Ferdinand, you feel free to jump in. Polarizing meaning is that you're choosing to sit yourself at a particular point within the polarity. You're sitting to sit yourself, knowing where the pendulum swings. And like when I'm trading, I think I know where the market is going to go, so I put my stop loss slightly below it so that I can continue in the trade. So this is knowing where how the poles work, what's the extent of the pole, and then putting yourself mentally beyond a certain state. So you might not can get to the state physically, but you can mentally put yourself beyond a certain state. And
let me just throw this definition on the screen just real quick, so we can see, since you brought it up. Polarized.
Yeah, man, it's important that they're using certain words for and this is telling you, to me, how to put yourself beyond karmic laws, things that should happen to you. It shouldn't be the season. There we go. So restrict vibrations. A transverse wave, especially light, holy. So once again, when I think of polarizing, and it's saying set yourself within a particular place in the pole, to go within the pole, you have to fix your vibration. You have to be able to know the frequency of the scale, and to know your current position in the scale, and then knowing how to fix, compartmentalize, shrink your vibration into a frequency, which then will send you to another part of the scale. So let's go back. They have learned how to use it instead of being used by it. The master of Hermetics polarizes himself at a point which he desires to rest, and then neutralize the rhythmic swing of the pendulum, which would tend to carry him to another pole. So it's showing you right there. You know what I mean?
I just said
that you understand. Normally, you'll say, okay, when I do this, I get hit here, right? I get hit here. That's the extent of that pendulum swing. So now I can go in mind, since we know mind is the first principle. I can't get there in body. The body, I'm gonna keep getting hit by that pendulum swing. But Billy, the fact that, you know, we are God, so we have the use of mind, which is God. We can put ourselves in another condition outside of that condition by the polarization of our mind, which is the concentration of our mind to a certain imaginable point that's outside of the awareness, which if I was to cheat and give you the code, I would say literally being able to see the effect coming, but it stops at a certain point, and then you see it through the law of neutralization. You know what I mean? Which is when something like trading, bro, this reminded me of trading, because when something is happening, you cannot let the emotional, because it's not necessarily what you think, it's what you think polarized by the emotionality of it, which then turns you into a mosquito, like a light, when you now then see the thing, and then you react, reanimate, emotionalize energy in motion. You become a vibratory signature, which then thus attracts the thing to you. So when you are neutralizing, come on, guys, let's cook. We cooking together. When you're neutralizing, you are seeing the thing happen, but you are not reacting to it, thus putting yourself outside of the grasp of the polarizing polarity. This is what, to me, it's describing. And this is how you can, like I say, guys, you guys need to hit the super chat. There's a super forgive, even if it's retroactively, because, you know, some of this stuff, we're in the age of enlightenment, so it's cool. But some of this stuff, oh my God, people would know it and they would shut up. And you could not damn sure find two guys yap about it on YouTube. You had to go and figure this stuff out yourself. But once again, if you think that it's saying something different, I would love to hear your understanding. But based off what I'm at this particular point in my life, you know, it's compartmentalizing. This is what it's telling you to do. So I just want to go through it one more time. It said the master of Hermetics polarizes himself at a point. So we have to we understand what polarizing means. Basically means it's the collapsing of a vibration into a particular point, which then creates, you know, a point to a point in which he desires to rest, which means place yourself, you know. He desires.
My bad.
Okay, you good. Hey, look, so nice you had to hear it twice. And then neutralize. So let's bring up neutral, if you don't mind, brother. Let's bring up that word, neutralize, or neutral. Yeah, just so that I'm not, you know how Christians like to add extra. I don't want to add extra relatives, even though I am paraphrasing, but I believe I'm paraphrasing according to some of the.
You said neutralize?
Yes, neutralize.
All right, got you.
So we could really make sure that these aren't just words. Every word was specifically chosen for a purpose to convey a point.
That's a fact. All right, let's see.
Since we're talking about rhythm, we might as well show you guys how they're explaining how to neutralize rhythm.
Facts. There it is right here.
Okay. And once again, the words is beautiful. Render something. That you guys know I'm not lying. I didn't look these words up and tell, but you know, shout out to the Akashic, shout out to the spirit, shout out to the mediums that's using me and my brother now to convey. I cannot take credit for some of this stuff I hear just as it's coming out too. But to render something ineffective or harmless by applying an opposite force of or an effect. So we talked about how it's not just what you thought. The thought has to be coupled with a vibratory frequency. It has to be coupled with a particular energy. So a lot of us don't understand how our frequencies, both good and bad, are making us a hot magnet for the pendulum to hit us. So this is why sometimes even good emotions needs to be checked. And this is why I prefer a more stoic nature, despite my animation. When I'm not on camera, I'm really like a lot of times calm and cool, because I understand that when I like even this call, I'm going to the extreme of excitement. Now I'm going to have a period of polarity. I'm going to get drained because I have to shoot back on that pendulum. As you said, I'm on the pendulum. Now, what would be less on the pendulum is to have, hey guys, but once again, I wouldn't be able to convey the energy emotion, and then you guys wouldn't even watch what we're saying. So this is me as an alchemist understanding how to use the pendulum to get to you, but I'm also telling you that there's a certain frequency, there's a certain ability to view your reality, be in it, but not be of it, and reach the state of neutralization. So the things that you think that should affect you, good, right, wrong, or indifferent, they don't have an effect because you were able to neutralize them just by using your mind and then your heart to not react to such a thing. And just even that, I'm not making this up. I am paraphrasing, because I'm my own instrument, so I can't teach it how they teach it. But you could reach a point by being able to now, if you can't view it, you don't even know where to put your emotions, by polarizing yourself into a set position that is then thus looking at the pendulum, and then desensitize yourself to the effects of the pendulum, and then the pendulum will not swing and hit you. Now, will you be able to do this all the time? I don't think anyone has a flawless victory. This is the beauty of it. No matter how much of a master you are, you get caught up into, but can you reach certain points where things are happening that should happen to you and they're not happening to you because you're using the spirit of neutralization, and you understand that at sometimes you can cheat, so-called cheat reality, where the cost of your sins should equal up to this wager
by raising your vibration.
Right. It should equal up to this rate, to this measure, but somehow it doesn't. And where did we end up last? So, and I'm just going to finish up here, and then you can add your, rhythm to the rhythm. But all individuals who have attained any degree of self-mastery, right? Very specific words. Any individuals, because they know it's not for everyone. Any individual who have attained any degree of self-mastery do this to a certain degree, absolutely, more or less unconsciously, but masters, that's the whole thing, do it consciously, which is let certain things brush off your shoulder, which is rendering the effects. Some of us just have that ability, but those who are conscious, we let most things roll off our shoulder, but the master does this consciously, and by these words are so powerful. And this is why when I read books like this, bro, sometimes I can't even get off the first 5 pages. I keep rereading them all over again. And consciously, and by the use of his will, by the use of mind, this isn't something you can passively do. You can't passively circumvent, just think, no, you have to use a conscious effort to skip a season, or to skip an effect or a consequence of something that you demonstrated into the projection. And attains, remember I talked about stoicism, attains a degree of poise, which is not happy. Like me, I'm not poised right now. I'm lit. We cooking. You know what I mean? I'm not poised. You know what I mean?
I'll pull the definition up.
All right, might as well, before we continue, before I made it absolute. You know what I mean? Because this is, you see, it has it capitalized. So we might as well just take the time, and we might only be able to get through another. We might still have gender, might need to be episode 3. How we going?
Oh yeah, we cooking for real right now. We're getting into something. All right, here goes poise right here.
Graceful, elegant bearing in a person, balance, equilibrium, control. You know what I mean? Grace. You know what I mean? So once again, stoicism. This is why I love spiritualism and stoicism, mixed into one. All right, let's get back to the chef pot. Just to walk them through this rhythm. Yeah, we're gonna walk them through this rhythm. So to a degree of poise and mental firmness, almost impossible of belief on the part of the masses who are swung back and forth like a pendulum. They're not on the pendulum. He said like a pendulum. Right. This principle and that of polarity, once again, because you can't separate the principles, they're all interconnected. The principles in that of polarity have been closely studied by the Hermetists, and the methods of counteracting, neutralizing, and using them form an alchemy part of the Hermetic alchemy. You know what I mean? So, man, listen, I don't even know we even have any more even much thus to say about rhythm. And once again, guys, this is something that where it's something to listen to over and over again. It's something to go back and really just entertain. Even with me, I appreciate him for choosing this book. It came at a perfect time, especially at this precipice of self sovereignty that I'm taking, and almost like a demigod, rebuking the gods and taking my full power back, and understanding who I am, and what I am, and how to develop my quote unquote god like, or alchemical or hermetic like abilities, being able to, because once again, we cannot stop the pendulum from swinging, right? And a lot of times it's swinging conscious and unconscious, but at times, if you know that there's a particular pendulum coming, a la what your boy Ferdinand has been telling you guys, that there's a pendulum coming, and he's been telling you how to spot it and see it, you're able to use this law if you're really pertinent and if you're really serious to not be as affected as the masses, even because you know that there's a pendulum coming. You're able to put yourself slightly out of reach, and then even when the foe is coming, you neutralize and you counteract the foe with your mentalism. You cannot submit to the idea that the pendulum is swinging to you. And even though it's challenging, once again, even myself, it is in use. It doesn't mean that what we're saying is not any less true, even though we're imperfected beings falling short of the glory as well. But at times, all of us have been in the situation, and whether you call them Buddha, God, Allah, Krishna, and every person in between, and I swear if this don't never happen, that was you circumvent, because you should have paid the cost because you did the crime. You did it. But somehow you, with your conscious will, prayed to whoever you thought can get you out of the pickle, which is typically when we only want to pray anyway. You know what I mean? When we're in a pickle. And this, just your will, even if you place it a false image upon the will, God, Allah, Krishna, whoever, but just your conscious will and your intent of being outside of this pendulum swing. Most of us has had an experience where we unconsciously use the law of rhythm and polarity to not pay the cost of the state that we should have paid the cost of.
I agree with you on that one, man. I think we definitely did our due diligence on rhythm. Let's go ahead and jump into cause and effect. This is
Go ahead, my brother. This is a beautiful one. We might spend another 2 hours just on this. Jesus Christ.
Cause and effect. Oh man, when I think about cause and effect, it automatically takes me to the law of suggestion. I'm consistently paying attention to the outcome of a person's life because of my work in holistic health within our Root Tribes company, and for any outcome, there has to be a certain amount of suggestions to help maneuver that outcome in that direction. And those suggestions come in many different forms, right? But what's the cause? You know what I'm saying? When you really think about that, what's the cause? I would say the cause is deep core desire, will, with some sprinkled in, if not smothered on, perspective on regress trauma, right? And
I like that word, perspective on regress trauma.
And that's what it is. It always is perspective, because every one of us has trauma that's happened in our life in all kinds of different ways. But what do you believe about who you are at the moment of that trauma? How has it stuck with you? Have you grown from it? Right? All of those things become a question. But this principle right here manifests in every piece of it. Cause and effect, right? where there is an effect, there was a cause. If there was a cause, there was an effect, right? So I'm going to go ahead and do a little reading. The principle of cause and effect. Every cause has its effect. Every effect has its cause. Everything happens according to law. Chance is but a name for law not recognized. There are many planes of causation, but nothing escapes the law, the Kabbalion. This principle embodies the fact that there is a cause for every effect, an effect from every cause. It explains that everything happens according to law, that nothing ever merely happens, that there is no such thing as chance, that while there are various planes of cause and effect, the higher dominating the lower planes, Still, nothing ever entirely escapes the law. The Hermetists understand. Let me move over here. The Hermetists understand. Where am I at? I should have moved. All right. The Hermetists understand the art and methods of rising above the ordinary plane of cause and effect to a certain degree. And by mentally rising to a higher plane, they become causers instead of effects. The masses of people are carried along, obedient to environment, the wills and desires of others stronger than themselves. Heredity, suggestion, and other outward causes moving them about like pawns on the chessboard of life. But the masters, rising to the plane above, dominate their moods, characters, qualities, and powers, as well as the environment surrounding them, and become movers instead of pawns. They help to play the game of life instead of being played and moved about by other wills and environment. They use the principle instead of being its tools. The masters obey the causation of the higher planes, but they help to rule on their own plane. In this statement, there is condensed a wealth of Hermetic knowledge. Let him read who can.
You see my face. I'm over here like a bat. I was listening to battle rap right before you call. I mean, right before I got on the call. I'm over here just like barely can even sit down. Like, Jesus Christ. They just, you know what I mean? Like, I don't even know. It's like I don't even know where to start, man. So I'll let you just go, man. Jesus, that was a lot. That was a lot.
You know, I pay attention to cause and effect and everything. You know, like I said, my holistic health practice, I'm consistently having conversations with individuals about their lifestyle, right? So we're always looking into the 6 keys of life within their lifestyle to see how we get to where they are. And then it's also what we use on how we get back, right? So the 6 keys of life becomes its own cause and effect.
Mm.
When we think about cause and effect, we could talk about circadian rhythm, right? So let's go into the sunlight, right? Early in the morning, you get up, go get you some sunlight. You align your circadian rhythm. You charge up your melatonin, right? And then the effects could be likened to good sleep because that same melatonin that you're charging up in the sunlight, now you're going to use in the absence of light at night, right? So you can recharge, so you can heal, right? So you can rebuild, right? This is what sleep is for, right? But this is its own cause and effect set of rhythms, right? That we live in, circadian rhythms, right? Cause and effect. Let's say a person who wants to elevate their spiritual ascension, right? They want spiritual ascension to go to the next level. Well, they would need to have some causes in there for that. The effect.
Right. You can want all you want.
Exactly. You know, and then there's others out here who they have this effect. They don't really know exactly what the cause was, but they could trace back. They could find the cause because how this law works, there's no effects without a cause. Every cause has to have some effects. So anytime we want to understand or overstand anything, we can use this principle alone. But if we start to add in polarity, we start to add in rhythm, we start to add in vibration, and we start to add in correspondence and mentalism, then we start to get more of a clear picture, right? Because sometimes any one of these principles used alone might produce an illusion, right? But when we have a holistic view using all 7,
That's a fact. But yeah, my brother, man, this law, you know, one of the first things that I just want to understand, you know, not understand, but you know, get the people understand that each one of these laws can also be applied in reverse, because that's just utilizing its very law on its own self is the polarity. So when you say as above, so below, it specifically also makes sure, because a lot of times people leave out the comma and what comes after the comma, because you have to say it one way, you have to say it in reverse the other way too. Absolutely. to complete it. So a lot of times, So a lot of times, you know, we read that there's a cause for every effect, but then we forget that there's also an effect for every cause, right? And for man to become, and then let's scroll down. It was some important things that it was saying in there that I was just soaking in, couldn't even the next one that I couldn't even really react. Okay, here Here we go. Let me see. Where was saying the play? Okay. But the masters rising to a plane above, right, dominates their moods, right? Your energy, emotion. A major mood is how you feel about yourself, right? Which leads us to your character. So your mood about your character, right? And the qualities of your character, right? And then the powers that come as the effect of going through that order of self-understanding, right? So that somehow, right, that effect within itself, just to do those things that it mentioned, right, creates a causality, a new causality. You know what I mean? So the effect, and if you could bring it back up, because the page is making sure I stay up there. We can appreciate you. Yeah, because then I lose my head. Like, oh man, I forgot what I was saying.
Oh, my bad.
Yeah, I'm cheating. I'm like at the homework right there.
Do what you do, man.
Yeah, absolutely. So when we apply these things, mood, character, mind, I don't think they just put these words down just for nothing. I think that I look at each word, I'm trying to dissect. And then, they said a plane above, but we understand that there really isn't an above to the degree, maybe we'll say the meta. So when they say above there, to me, they're always referencing man's mind. You know what I mean? The mind of man, to go to that plane. Our Heavenly Father said, what you want to call it. And then thus, dominate our mood, right? So we understand to a degree that our energy and motion, that our rhythm is then projecting in front of us. So if we are having certain causalities and certain effects that we don't like, we must go into our mind. First, we must take a look at our mood, because there's a direct correlation between our mood and what is being manifested, right? And then we have to take a look at the character, because reality is, whether you understand it or not, because we're talking to alchemists here, so I don't have to put disclaimers in for the mundane, you know what I mean, et cetera, et cetera. You shouldn't be on here if you're not into something, right? So let's just keep talking plain. So your character and your self-belief about your character is the actual thing that is manipulating your reality to respond to you. Your belief in self and your position in your world is creating external environments to line up to who you believe that you are inside of your own mind. What you believe about your emotions, what you believe about your character, your quality, is then thus creating your power. So this is why I said, they help play the game of life, because life is a game to be played, or you be played by it. And then it talks about how you don't be swayed by other people's wills and environment, which most of us is too. And we talked about this before. Shame, a lot of shame. You're being molded by other people's beliefs, by other people's energies, because you don't think that you have the power to go on self-mind and on your self-will, and then allow that to be the business that you stand on. You know what I mean? So
yeah,
one of the biggest things that we really have to understand is that, yes, it's cause and effect, right? But then we can understand that we can enact the effect and cause, which meaning that I have a cause and effect. I was able to analyze, I was able to see when it comes to, let's say, money. I check my emotions, negative. I check my characteristic about how do I deal with it? Do I spend it? I'm just taking inventory, and then I go through the list of these qualities and I say, okay, this is then thus. Remember, we go back to the first principle with poise, not emotionality. Because when we're looking at our own self and we're not controlling the emotional state on how we look upon stuff, we're inadvertently, even if it's for a moment of inventory, just to look at yourself, you're creating a ripple effect that the universe doesn't never stop responding to us. So this is why when you're doing self-checks, be able to do it with poise, with balance, with equilibrium, with control, right? And a lot of the times to be emotional means to be out of control, right? When you're more in control, you're operating from a state of more of a non-biased, right? So you can take proper inventory of yourself, of your emotions, of your character, right? And then you can use to polarize that vibration. We only using the principle. I don't even got to talk outside the book. You know what I mean? Right. Then we can use that to go back to the principle of rhythm and polarity, right? And then we can then take that energy and we can polarize it. So we see where the pendulum's been going. We see the effect where we be getting smacked. Now we're going to go back up to the higher law, you know what I'm saying, and honor the rhythm. And then we go back and we say, you know what, we're going to polarize ourselves. And it told you polarize yourself using the mental principle. I'm not making this up. We just read it. You know what I mean? So which means that you have to go not in condition, but in mind, since all is mind. So we know where we're working in the word of mind, we're working with the all. You know what I mean? So we go into a particular place in mind, and then we revisit these moods, these characters, and these qualities. What mood, what character, what quality would place me outside of the pendulum of poverty? We've identified poverty just by taking inventory and which created the pendulum. Now, this is high science, man. Shout out to whatever the source is that's bringing it through. Now, just by using these principles, we polarize a different mental condition that is able to see, because when you're in it, you can't solve a problem with the same mind that you got into it. You know what I mean? You can't solve a problem with the same mind that got you into it. So we have to get a new mind. The Bible says you shall be renewed of renewing of the mind and spirit. So this is telling you that process. So we then thus, not in the body, but in the mind, because the body can't get us there. The pendulum is kicking our butt. So you take a moment of reflection, of meditation. And since you know all is mind, so when you're using your imaginational faculties to entangle with another parallel reality, you know it's not just make believe. Unless we're gonna read the book or we're not gonna read the book. Either it's fantasy, it's fun, it's allegory, or it's not. You know what I mean? So when we're entangling ourselves and we're polarizing ourselves into a set point, which is then just imagine a condition that's not the condition that you currently have. You know what I mean? You're setting off a chain of events of causality in different planes that's unseeable, and these things start to ripple through. This is what it's describing, how the Hermeticists, this is why Jesus was a hermit. You know, he was able to see death and not recognize. He was able to see disease and not recognize. He was able to see horrors and not recognize it. Why? Because he didn't care the condition, the effect that the world brought to him. You know what I mean? He was able to go and polarize himself into a set position in his own mind space that was not in the current reality that he was even walking in, and was able to, on a higher plane, it told us higher planes dominate lower planes. He was able to go into a higher plane, which is the imagination of mind. We might not think it, because they told us it was just my imagination running away with me. Absolutely. This is what we want. We want our imaginations to run us past our current condition, past our current effects, past our current causality, so we can properly enact these hermetic principles, and we can polarize our vibration to a set point outside. This is the only way to change it. It's the only way to manifest. We're showing you how to manifest. It's a current pendulum that's kicking your ass. You don't want to get hit by that. In order to not be hit by it, you have to set yourself outside of the pendulum. Just that effect alone gets you into a whole different reality. Just by poverty, the poverty energy not kicking your ass all the day, automatically, without you even creating a plan for wealth, without you even creating, just escaping that pendulum. You don't even understand. It sends out a ripple effect. You know what I mean? So a lot of times you don't even have to know where you're going. You can just study what's going to be and say, you know what? This is how I have been thinking. I don't know what this new type of thing is going to get me, but at least it can't add up to this pendulum. You know what I mean? Yeah. And you can use your imagination. I cannot stress. We know. I feel like sometimes we should put up a different word, because I feel like the word doesn't put so much dirt on that word. You know what I mean? And I'd rather use imagination, because when I say mind, what is mind? At least when I say imagination, we know that's mind in action. I think that's a little bit more refined than just saying use your mind.
Mind is all.
Mind is all. So when we use our, imagination, nation of magicians, when we use our ability to go into a different polarized set point, we can then we can't kill the frequency, poverty, or whatever disease or thing that is always going to exist, but it's telling us that we can stand apart from it. Just how Ferdinand, he might be going out and seeing a whole bunch of disease and sickness, but does that mean that he's suffering from that pendulum? Why? You know what I mean? And I think the moment you're able to separate yourself, I mean, listen, we're just preaching from the good book, right? That's you jumping over the pendulum, right?
You just did also.
You didn't make disease exist.
Oh, I gotta say, I'm so sorry, right? So, like, what you just said is so real, man. Like when the COVID pandemic happened, I was going to a bunch of people's houses, bringing herbs, helping them heal through the problems that they was dealing with. And there was quite a few people who I ran into who literally dealt with COVID, and they was like, yeah, I'm dealing with COVID. I know you probably, you might be, you might not want to come through or whatever. And I'm like, yo, it's all good. No problem. Yeah, I'll be there in a little bit. Right. And my fear level was down so low.
Neutralizing.
Thank you.
That's not even you. You use the act of new. We're not even. We don't have to use nothing else. What was in this book, like it said. You neutralized it. The principle of neutralization. You felt no way about it. You know what I'm saying? So then, thus, you put yourself out of the pendulum, because we know whether it's happy or fear. These are like for the pendulum, it's attractors for the pendulum.
Yeah.
That's why, like I said, you have to be careful what you're excited about, and because just know when you're at a high frequency, whether it's good or bad, you are pulling a pendulum towards you. To me, it's better to maintain that spirit of neutralization, even though we know it's impossible, because we're always going to fall victim to the veil of forgetfulness and the pendulum swings. But at least we can put together a consciousness. For most days, we're looking at stuff and we're not affected. And maybe after you looked at it, you decide, you say, you know what? I'm gonna throw a little bit of happy on that thing, just to rate, you know what I mean? But before I react, because why? And this is what it is, because sometimes even if you can trigger me to be happy outside of my awareness, I'm a little bit upset. You know what I mean? Like, hold on, because I want to choose to be happy. I didn't even get to choose. I'm happy now. Now I'm vibrating frequency. Now I got a pendulum coming to me. I want to be able to say, you know what if I don't want that pendulum? So just because you did something doesn't mean I have to react that way. Let me think about it first before I throw some happy on that, or some excitement on that, or some, you know what I mean? And it might sound crazy to the uninitiated, but to us in the game, we're starting to really understand that we must be masters of our emotions.
Absolutely. And I really want to let you know how much I appreciate the holistic view that you come with on these topics. Like that's really rare to come in contact with. And that's part of what like made me sit back and say, yeah, man, you're right. Like I'll put these conversations up against any of the scholars out here because we're coming with the full view of it, right? And we got two super intelligent brothers, but each one is coming with different viewpoints, but it's still kind of aligning within this holistic view, this full circle. And now you get to see it from totally different angles, and you realize that because we're in a multiversal view of things in many different ways. There's infinite ways to see things. There's infinite amounts of dimensions, infinite amounts of realms. Well, there's an infinite amount of way to see things.
That's a fact. And like you said before, your perspective of your trauma of aggression, life is nothing but perspective. We're just, me and you are deciding that we like the way our perspectives is merging. So now we say, you know what, we're going to stay on this timeline. We're co-creating each other. We're both still in our own slightly different variation, but we like each other enough to where we're going to share enough perspective so that we can then thus have this contrast, still knowing that I'm still you and you're still me. You know what I mean? Because I'm not even myself. I'm more of the thing that isn't me than I am the thing that is me. And so are you. So that's what makes us brothers. You know what I mean? But while still honoring, I don't want to go to the 5D and the 6D place. I want to be, why? Because then I lose the sense of you, Ferdinand. I can't even have a friend called Ferdinand. I can't look at you. I can't, because then we merge into this thing that's unrecognizable. And I've through certain substances know what that place is like. And I'm not trying to say that it's dope, but I'm honoring my perception of this human experience as long as I can, because I like the condensreality. While everyone's trying to escape, I'm not. I'm trying to understand more of it so I can manipulate more to my liking. You know what I mean?
Living in the present is so important. Like you said, there's a lot of people trying to escape their reality, not living in the reality that they're here for a reason. And every one of us, in my personal opinion, are here to master something. So if you're trying to escape this reality, you're putting so much energy and time and effort into what's the word I'm looking for? Obviously I used escape, but resistance. You're putting up so much energy for resistance, you're using your will for that purpose. When your will is supposed to be being used for spiritual destiny, because at the end of the day, the cords that are tied to you, that's tied to everything else in the universe, those cords need to be struck a certain kind of way. There's a certain vibration that they need to have happening, right? And that's based on how we live.
And just to give you more of my holistic, let's scroll back up a little bit. Look, we almost on the last one, so we're gonna give this one a little bit more love. We got one more principle. left for this. Okay, so yeah, and this is where, you know, once again, and I get it, because I used to, all the views I oppose now I used to have, so I have empathy for them, right? But you know, when I'm in my new state, I got to be in my new state, so I got to give you smoke, you know what I mean? Yeah, but I have empathy, trust me, I do. I ain't mad at you. But so I just want to go over this a little bit more while my man is getting his smoke in the air, and absolutely. So it said the principle embodies the fact that there's a cause for every effect, an effect for every cause, right? It explains that everything happening according to law, that nothing ever merely happens.
Thank you.
That there is no such thing as chance. So once again, I look at chance and choice under the same wing. So there is no such thing as choice. You talk about that golden ratio, you talk about that that perfect spiral that is unfolding. We are a piece of that spiral, you know what I mean?
Right.
So I'm gonna keep it on. I said that while there are various planes of cause and effect, the higher dominating the lower plane, still nothing ever entirely escapes the law. The Hermetists understand that that art and the methods of rising above ordinary plane of cause and effect to a certain degree, and by mentally rising to a higher plane, like I just told you, by us using our minds, because that's all that universe is. So when you entangle with versions of yourself in mind, as we all do, we can't even help it. Whether you're daydreaming, you might be at work, daydream like, oh, when I get home, ooh, you don't even know that you're creating more circuitry for that reality to be even more of a probability. You know what I mean? Because why? In the universe that we live in, you might show up to home and there is no home there. You're trying to figure out what happened. You know what I'm saying? Because there's a lot of uncertainty that's dealt here. So when we consistently build mind images of even people that's familiar, we're concrete, even situations. Some of us, you're at work thinking of a bad regress trauma situation, don't know that just by you consistently entangling with it, you're further collapsing this reality into a particular effect. Why? Because all is mind, right? And when you're in the now, you are using a piece of God, but it's when you're in the not now that you're using more of God's ability. You know what I'm saying? Whether you're not knowing of the past, not knowing of the future, not knowing of traumatic events, anytime that you're going above your current condition in your mind's eye to a condition that you're not currently under the physical constraints of, you are using the power of God to co-create this reality and give it extra strings and firmness and reality to continue to affect you. You know what I mean? And it's not until you stop mentally entangling with these phantoms, with these ghosts, with these storylines, until you can so-called rise above them and not be affected to that cause. And another thing that I want to say is that what we have to really understand is that once you start to let go and let God, and me and Ferdinand talked about this before, I don't know whether it was off the phone or online, but we talked about some ideas of submission. I can't remember all of it, but once you submit that there is a higher order, that there is a high, and not only is a higher order, we don't want to submit because we think they forgot about us. But maybe he don't know my desire. So I gotta, stay on God's or source's ass to let it know what I want. Because if I just submit to the divine power, it might leave me out the story, which is poppycock. You know what I mean? It's poppycock. Which anything, as Ferdinand said, you are adding resistance to the timeline if you would just let go of old ideas of self. Because trust me, these old ideas are trying to get away further than what you want to let them, but you have a ticking timer to keep bringing them up, bringing them back up, bringing them back up. You know what I mean? When we have to understand is that there is a divine purpose. There is a divine plan for each of us, right? And I feel like what I'm doing, and thank you for Ferdinand for being, because once again, I'm on this platform with you because I was still having resistance on me consistently showing up for myself to be more naturally what I am. You know what I mean? This is why the universe was like, you know what? It's time, because this is me letting go. And what you're seeing is what source would do with me if I stop being in my own damn way and surrender. It's destiny. It's spiritual destiny. It's spiritual fate. So you don't have to always have the pen and pad. You could focus just more on purity and submission alone and not read books, and the books will start to read you. Am I lying? Am I lying?
Thanks, man. That, and I'm glad you made that last point, because I tell people all the time, all of the religions say that they have the right information. I subscribe to more science. I would honestly say, based on what I've read, because of the path of purity that I've walked, that information is right and exact. However, you got some people around the world who never heard of a book. They don't even know what that is. so think about that, man. You got on this side of the polarity, you got people who might have the truth, maybe or maybe not, right? Then on this side of the polarity, you got people who never heard of a book. They don't even know what that is, right? So how do they achieve salvation? It's purity at the end of the day.
How do they know about the stars and the moons and the giant and everything that we know scholarly? And they didn't have a pen and paper. They had some rocks.
Cosmic connection.
they didn't have Tahuti, you know, sitting on. They just connected to the earth, like you said. And we talked about, if you guys missed our show on the grids and the places, you know what I mean? You definitely got to check that out. Is America the True Land? But they was able to connect to certain grids, eat certain fruits from these particular places that contain the inner formation, which we're all trying to get information, which is nothing but it's not an outer formation. We're hoping this thing would trigger a rearrangement within mind, an inner form that would then thus produce a different result that we're trying to, you know, witness. So the biggest thing that I wanted to touch on here was understand that there is no chance that somehow, right, even if you think you're making decisions, you're most likely not making decisions. It's probably, if you're making decisions that's more harmonious than you could have been in this if you would have surrendered to the naturalness of your own desires and wishes and ideologies and dreams inside of you, instead of having, as Ferdinand said earlier, those little voices, which is the restriction, which are the false idols, which are the past regressions, which are the, as they talked about in here, that you being dominated by other people's environments and other people's wills. You know what I mean? But I don't think you can ever stop fate. Now, you might have to go through 1,000 lifetimes of going through other people's wills and environments to finally accept your own, but your path, loved ones that's out here, is already set. I promise you, it's already set. You know, I promise you, the thing that's been imbued upon you, you cannot earn. You know what I mean? It was given. It said, it is the Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom. You know what I mean? In the end was already scripted before the beginning. You know what I mean? So, and I know that's challenging because we're surrounded by so many wills and so many environments and so many phantoms. You know what I mean? Go ahead.
A never-ending story.
There we go.
I don't know if you ever watched the movie before, but
it's been years.
The movie, but this movie is like it's like a parable of what you just said. Now, what I know about the never-ending story is an actual parable of the zodiac, right? But it still becomes like an allegory or a parable of what you just said. But that same story is the story of humanity. That same story is the story of the universe. That same story is the story of truth. The never-ending story.
And that's what we are, because as much as we like this realities, is when this one is done and we're unaware of Ron Ferdinand, we just get plopped into another one. And maybe at that one, you know, a little bit more, a little bit less, but they're all valid realities. You know what I mean? Yeah, so I just want to finish up this last little paragraph and then we can move on to the final one. But it says the hermetist understands the art and method, right? And I keep repeating this because repetition is the mother of all skill. Even for myself, I'm reading to myself too.
Sure.
The hermetist understands the art and methods of rising above, right, the ordinary plane of cause and effect. So that means something happened. You did a cause. It's okay. You could have did it. It produced effect. You were able to recognize it, right? And by rising mentally, remember I said that imagination. That's the only way I know. I'm giving you guys my own secrets or keys of how I've been. Just using mine isn't enough. Mine, what is mine? Well, when I say, oh, my imagination, as soon as I say my imagination, it starts to run regardless. Like, it starts to just think of stuff. You know what I mean? So, and by mentally rising to a higher plane, right, and becoming causers instead of the effects. You know what I mean?
I got something for that.
Yes, sir.
So when everybody out there who's listening, when you think about this, what Rod's talking about, rising to another level. Well, what exactly is that? How exactly do we do that? That is altering how you ingest, how you receive information, but also raising your thoughts to infinite wisdom. Also raising your thoughts to love, raising your thoughts and your beliefs and your knowing to authenticity, to raising your thoughts and your beliefs and your knowing to love, compassion, empathy, truth, freedom, justice, and all of those jewels of Islam. But what it really is principles, morals, and ethics used within laws. Now, what you're doing is called sacred geometry.
And we're still honoring, because remember in the earlier one, it said to honor your emotions. So the spirit of authenticity comes with an emotion. The spirit of love comes with an emotion. The spirit of gratitude comes with an emotion. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And these emotions then does have their own effect. And a lot of times when you're in these emotions, you're outside of what you don't have, and you're more okay. Even authenticity. Authenticity is like another variation of gratitude to me, which meaning that you need nothing else in place of it in order to be what you are at the moment. You know what I mean? So when we're entangling with these energies and emotions, like I said, thank you, Ferdinand, for adding that, because once again, we already know that the mind is important, but we know that the vibratory frequency of the mind, and these are all different frequencies that we say how. We don't think just by being authentic enough is enough to produce a new condition. We don't think just being gratitude enough is to produce a new condition, because we're not in the word enough to understand that the emotion, the energy, emotion, the heart, you know, these things that we feel in our hearts, you know, shall be done unto us. You know what I mean? So this is why it is important to rise in emotion, to rise in your mentality to these higher planes, because you might not even know what these higher planes would produce, but it doesn't need you to know. It just needs you to embody the frequency, and then the frequency reveals the path. So this is how Ferdinand keeps saying. He doesn't necessarily even tell you to go do nothing complex. He just brings it back to the simplicity of it all, because that's what it really is. And somehow, by you working with these effects, you're moving causality. It already told us on unknown planes. You know what I mean? Go, yeah, let's go.
So my current mentor, he one of the things that he said to me the other day was, "Hey, listen, Mo, you gotta get the basics, man. You gotta get the basics, man." He's like, "Listen, you can learn all that other fly stuff out there, but if you don't learn the basics and you get into a little match with somebody, then what happens is the one with the basics, he gonna mop you all over the floor, even though you got all this other fly stuff, right?" So he's like, "Listen, get it back in that Koran, man. Keep learning, keep reading, right?" Well, I take that. I believe in that. I know that information to be true. I don't just believe it. I know what he said is true. I've lived that information. However, I consistently bring it back, like Raw just said, to the 6 keys of life, because this is the basics on the physical plane for the makeup of the human animal, right? Well, at the spiritual and physical level, I mean mental levels, things may be slightly different. But however, what we do at the physical level, what we do down here, affects what's going on up here. What we're doing up here affects what's going on down there. So it becomes effectively a balancing act, right? And it creates certain types of causes and certain types of effects pending what it is that we are choosing to do, right? But we got to always come back to the basics, and then that gives us something to build on, right? So, like, for example, if we have a conversation about Christianity, then you and I are more than likely going to start with the origin, right? Because we're always going to go to the basics to be able to get a proper understanding and to build on those basics. You know, we always want to start with a seed, and then that seed grows a little bit. It gets a stalk. From that stalk, now, because the roots are strong, the stalk is producing branches, right? But we started with the origin first.
Nah, man, and just to touch on that before we dive into the into the next one, man.
Sure.
You know, there people don't, a lot of people don't know, and you might know, because you know you definitely be in the Bible. Oh, was there more? Okay, no, we read that to play the game of life. Absolutely, because it absolutely is the game. And I'm gonna let Ferdinand get to the last principle, you know, after this. But in Genesis 1:28, you know, this passage, you know, supersedes even him giving Noah the commandments. He gave man a particular commandment, which I think kind of helps us on our purpose, because you talked about something about, you know, 3D and there's other planes. But you know, I used to think, oh, I'm trying to get to the 4D5 so much, and now I understand, no, man, like we're here to Earth. This 3D Earth realm was given to man as a gift, as a beautiful, beautiful gift. And there were certain commandments in the Genesis, ironically, you know, that kind of tell men what to do. So Genesis 1:28, I'm gonna read from my screen. And this is around Adam and Eve, and God blessed them, and God said unto them, be fruitful, multiply, fill the earth, right? And then subdue it. And we're going to get back to that word. You know, we're big on words, right? And have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the fowl of the air, and over every living thing that moveth upon the earth. Now, Ferdinand, let me see your face again so I can talk with you real quick. Let's go over these. Let's go over these 4 things real quick, right? Because you definitely helped me, and then I know when to stop. I can see when you want to jump into. So be fruitful, right? Produce fruits of the mind, which we're already doing. You know, whether it's good or bad, right? Because this is not even commandment. We can't really help to do. Be fruitful. Then the next thing, you know, we believe in order. Multiply these fruits. You know what I mean? And then there's another order. It says replenish, or another scripture will say fill the earth. So be fruitful, because we can't spread things if we haven't sat and get information or information like we've been doing and accumulating knowledge. But then once we start accumulating knowledge, we have to let this knowledge multiply on itself. We have to let the fruits multiply on itself. And then after a certain time, we have to then, which I feel like we're doing now, we're called to spread it. Spread the fruit. Fill the earth with it. Or this copy says replenish. And then the last one, it says subdue it. Subdue the earth. So once again, we like definitions of words. If you want to pull up the word subdue, because I think that's very important.
It's off the screen for a second.
We're gonna be like the Hebrew Israelites. One of us gonna have a dictionary at all times. It'd be like holding place. You know what I'm saying?
All right, so what's the first one we looking for?
Oh, we can just use subdue. Let's just do subdue. I just want to focus on that. I think it's very important that word choice. You know what I mean? So overcome, quieten, what? Or bring under control, conquer, defeat, vanquish, get the better of, overpower. So, which meaning that you was going to find the earth in one way, and you was going to have to overpower it into another way. So this is the idea when we think it's a punishment that we was born into sin, when it really was a beautiful gift, that we could be put into an environment that was one way. We could start with our mind, let the fruits of our mind multiply. And then the God said we have the power to call things that are unseen as if they were. Once it reaches a certain boiling point, what could a man not help do but tell everyone Paul revere his way of the ideas that's populating in his mind? You know what I mean? And he knew, just how Christ did, that it was going to be met with the level of adversity. But then we're called to do what? Subdue it. So what? Just like the 13th zodiac, we talked about it before, a Siphius, whatever, but they call him the serpent bearer. Why? Because he's the one who wrestled and tussled with the snake, or Jacob wrestling with an angel. So when we're met with resistance, we understand that there had to be a level of resistance, especially for the masters. How do you know you want everything just to be easy? You don't want to get popped in the mouth. These are the things that you know that you're almost doing it the right way when you are being met with the pressure, when you are being met with the particular resistance. You know what I mean? So I just wanted to add that little sauce into it, because that is the Genesis. And as we head to the last principle, which we're teaching you, basically the principle of generation, which gender is. And as Ferdinand was talking about earlier, when he talked about what needs to come together in order for life to produce, this is when all the principles come into, as Ferdinand said, 1 and 2. Now we're giving you the full scope, because we're getting into the 7th principle, which is one of the most important principles, because it's the principle of Genesis. They're just calling it gender. But as Ferdinand get into the good chapter, we're going to break it down. Go ahead, man. I'm going to go. This coffee's running through. I can still hear you through the Bluetooth. I'll be right back.
Cool. All right, so we got the principle of gender here. Let's see. Gender is everything. Everything has its masculine and feminine principles. Gender manifests on all planes, the Kabbalion. The principle of gender. The principle embodies the truth that there is gender manifested in everything, the masculine and feminine principles ever at work. This is true not only of the physical plane, but of the mental, and even the spiritual planes. On the physical plane, the principle manifests as sex. On the higher planes, it takes higher forms. But the principle is ever the same. No creation, physical, mental, or spiritual, is possible without this principle. An understanding of its laws will throw light on many a subject that has perplexed the minds of men. The principle of gender works ever in the direction of generation, regeneration, and creation. Everything and every person contains the two elements or principles, or this great principle within it, him or her. Every male thing has the female element also. Every female contains also the male principle. If you would understand the philosophy of mental and spiritual creation, generation, and regeneration, you must understand and study this Hermetic principle.
Listen, this principle is so powerful. It could have been the first principle. You know what I'm saying? So you want to cook first, man. There's so many ways to cook on the principle of gender. You know what I mean?
You know what? When I think about the principle of gender, it automatically takes me to the physical plane. Obviously, we can touch it on multiple different planes, but we look at how how we build a nation, right? Well, the way we build a nation is with the triune, with the Trinity, mother, father, and child, right? Well, to achieve that, we have to have the male and the female in some which way, shape, or form. Even if we extract the eggs and we extract the sperm, we still have to have what came from the male, what came from the female. No matter if it's in vitro, any of that, it's still those principles involved, and it creates life. But we see this all over the universe. We can come away from the family element, and we can go to the television, right? We talked a little while ago about the battery. Well, if I'd like to be able to sit down and change the channels and turn up the volume or turn it down, well, I've got to put some batteries in there, and those batteries have the elements of gender, positive and negative, right? And this, like I said, this key, in a way, this principle it stands together in certain ways with the principle of polarity. The principle of polarity also has other elements that's a little different, so they are different. However, when we look at how a hurricane manifests, hot and cold air, right? This is all on the physical plane. Okay, we haven't even left the mental and the physical. We haven't even left the physical. We went to the mental. Let's go to the mental. Let's take a look at that. Well, we're made of 70% water, right? So that element is spiritually or symbolically aligned with emotions, right? Where we might have tsunamis, hurricanes, tornadoes, all kinds of different stuff happening within as a result of the water flow. And this water flow is also going to have that gender element manifest. We call it the we call it the what's the flow on the bottom? The undertow, right? We call it the undertow and the wave. This is positive and negative on the physical plane of all of these different elements that all have them. When we look at the principle of gender, that can bring in as above, so below. So above as below, so above, or however the second part goes. But we can bring in that when we go to the plant kingdom, and we're looking at how we've got a seed that produces a root system below ground, and then it has vegetation above ground, but they are the same.
That's a fact.
Right? So this is gender, right? So there's so many ways to look at this. But then let's say we go to the stars. There's a certain balance that our solar system has, surrounded by specific stars.
Facts.
These different stars are producing different energies that are serving as positive and negative, for lack of a better way of explaining this, right? And this also is the principle of gender, right? But I could give us so many different examples. I gotta hear you, brother.
Oh yeah, man. So that's scroll down a little bit. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So and we see, right, and this is how you know that we're living in the so-called end of times, or times where things are about to change, because you see a lot of perversion of gender happening here on the physical plane. You see a lot of circumventing, or at least the idea that certain roles or universal orders can be circumvented, can be nullified, can be not considered. We don't even have to consider male, female, gender, et cetera. And then you can see the correlation or the effect to that, to the lowest birth rates humanity has probably seen in forever long time. You know what I mean? Because when you start to play around with this immutable order, it's going to, not say that you can't, obviously we seem like we're having free will to manipulate it, but it's going to lead to an effect, and that effect usually is not creating new things or new life. And in our case, you have this rift between the genders, it seems like globally, and globally we are experiencing what usually happens when the male and the female gender come together, which is another life being created, being affected, so that's one way, as we, as it pertains to this reality, as we're seeing it manifest. And another way that it manifests is in, as Ferdinand talked about, is in the mental plane and in the spiritual plane. And there's a particular order, and we talked about before, the conscious, the superconscious, the subconscious. These things represent different genders, different energies that must come together in order to produce another energy. And this is why the principle of gender and generation is important, because if you're trying to bring things from a so-called higher plane, which, right, the 4D plane is more of a feminine, and then when sometimes they're flipped, right? So on this particular plane, the masculine energy is the dominant energy, is more of the controlling factor in the energy. But in the so-called spiritual plane, at the feminine energy is actually the more dominant energy and the more controlling energy. So in this world of the 3D, when a man wants to make certain effects, he can use his masculine energy, which he can move some of the pieces of the board around. But when it comes to him stepping outside of his senses and being able to produce something outside of what his senses can produce, he has to step into the feminine world, which is the imaginational mind, the mind that doesn't work with reason. Why? Because the masculine principle typically needs a reason. It needs a why. These are all, even down to our chromosome. Women are XX. Men have that why principle. So this is when that understanding, if you're trying to approach, let's say, manifestation or creating a new reality in a rigid way, you're using more of your senses, and you're not sitting down to. And we also know action is more masculine, right? And we know sitting, meditating is more of a feminine thing. This is why some men have challenges with harnessing the principle of gender when it comes to certain spiritualism, because it requires a lot of stillness. It requires a lot of so-called non-moving, a restful state, which is more of a feminine energy, in order to produce the causality, which then manifests into the world of why and reason. But when you're understand the genders, and then you go back up through the poles and understand that the genders are not just isolated to the seventh principle, they also, too, as Ferdinand said, work with polarity. They work with vibration. It works with rhythm. So when you understand that certain creational, I'll use that for lack of a better word, aspects is more controlled with the polarity of the feminine and more of the rhythm of the feminine, right? And then you go above the masculine. With the masculine needs a why and it needs a how, right? And we know from our lady counterparts, if you study them, they don't necessarily need a why or a how or a reason, which works in their detriment. But when you apply it masterfully, how am I going to get out of the situation? And the imaginational mindset, just imagine yourself out the situation, and your masculine mind tries to read, then thus because a lot of times the masculine mind, we know, is controlled by his ego. It steps outside of its role, right? And then it's trying to apply its understanding to a different plane of polarity, which it cannot. It has a certain limit. So this is when it said that even in the Bible, it said that God created him, her. And then this is a whole nother story. Then he created Eve. And we're still trying to reconcile what's going on. How did he create him, her, and then create Eve? Because just because it said her, the her and the woman, or the feminine and the woman, yes, women have more monopoly over feminine energy, but a woman does not define feminine energy. Feminine energy is beyond even an embodiment of a woman. This is how we're able to also to have it within us. So when God created Adam, in the Bible, we understand that the original Adam was the perfect harmonious blend of both masculine and feminine, the ultimate creator. This is why he created him, her. You know, it created a ecosystem where this one container was able to balance itself and then have creation. And then later on, it externalized a version of himself, which God said in the Bible, Adam was put to sleep, and then something within him, which was a piece of his feminine essence, was then pulled from without him, the splitting of the atom, you know what I'm saying, which realistically caused, because once again, the whole came from a different place and incarnated into the plane as a whole, a him, her, but it wasn't complete. Why? Because this is not a place of wholeness. This is a place of separation. This is why I'm saying this place isn't a place of punishment. It's just a different level of plane of causality, which the same thing, as you said, women, men earlier, is appearing as two, but we're realistically one being. And this is why the Bible mentions that a son shall go from his mother, a daughter shall go from mother, and meet each other. And we shall cling to each other, because when you start to really overstand and understand, as my boy said earlier, these principles, you start to understand that even me, and shout out to my uncle always used to say, a man without a woman is only half a man. I used to rebuff against the ideology, because I'm thinking he's talking physicality, but he's talking higher science, because the true essence of a man is the masculine and the feminine perfected within one vessel. Exactly. And then once we start to understand, and women think that I don't bang with them, but that's not true. I just don't bang with most of y'all. You know what I mean? I don't think it's all. You know what I mean? It's just that, yeah. So once you can meet yourself outside of self, and this is why the Bible calls us to love the wife as if we love our own self, because it is our own stuff. You start to understand that I am not looking at something separate of me under the cause of polarity. I am looking at myself being shown to myself under a different perspective, under a different filter. But to see the woman and to deny that she is not me is to not understand law. Right? To see the splitting of the atom and the separation. But if you remember, the Bible said that Adam 2.0 will be made from a quickening of the spirit. You know what I'm saying to say, which is a rise in that so-called feminine energy, mastered by the masculine, where the masculine can now control it in an equilibrium, though, not how it is now. Because once again, we can see the effects of the so-called patriarchy, matriarchy, and it'll kind of get us to understand where we are in relation to our internal battle. So yes, women are rising, but since they're rising to control, they're not rising to submit to control, which is the masculine. So we're still a little bit out of order. But it's a representation, because yes, the feminine has been suppressed for so long. We just been thinking that it's the principle of masculine, and then as a man thinketh, and since the man is not understanding that he's trying to think on his own femininity, because his femininity is creation, and he's trying to raise to me that energy up in him, you know what I mean? And at the same time as you are, my brother, where you're married to where now your physical manifestation is representing union. You know what I mean? And you can get back to self, because the true self is not man, woman, but it's man, woman in their proper roles. You know what I mean? In their proper roles, because we cannot deny that the feminine essence is the creative receptacle sub, like we see the tree might get all the shine, but we know the roots, the thing that is unseen, the submission. The women think that the submission is a lesser mission. It's not another mission. It just means that it's a meta mission. It's a mission that you don't necessarily see with your physical, but it's something that is unseen, which is the most powerful. You know what I mean? So when I am trying to understand this principle of gender, and as the principle said, it's not something that is just given to women. It's in every male and it's in every female. And we're trying to balance these energies within inside of self. And as we balance these energies inside of self, don't be surprised if you start seeing your reality as above, so below, mirroring this polarity of self rising of this energy in the women around you. You know what I mean? So don't be surprised as you become more subservient to the creative feminine energy and work more harmoniously with this energy inside of you. You start to see the women in your life replicate that same source and that same energy. You know what I mean? This is just what I'm experiencing from myself. You know what I mean?
Well, it's the law of suggestion.
Right. And we're honoring the law of principle, because what we're saying that these 7 principles are describing the very form of creation. So, and they go in order. So the principle of, in no pun intended, the principle of gender is your root chakra, is your sexual, creative, producing, organs. And then you go up the principles from here to you end up your crown chakra, which is the principle of mentalism. And then it goes even the right here, which is the 3rd chakra, which is the 3rd principle, which is the principle of vibration, which is your voice box. You know what I mean? And then rhythm, once again, which is your heart chakra, which is that, as Ferdinand said, that pulse, that heartbeat, which is ironically, your heart is actually producing and continuing that golden ratio. I don't know, most people, I know you probably know this, my brother, but we're trying to figure out who's the source of creation, and we're staring at it. Your heart is literally the beating pulse that is creating the continuance of life. You know what I mean? So, and I hope that this stuff is making sense. I'm really trying to just give a different abstract perspective on how it kind of works with me when we're talking about the principle of gender, which is the principle of generation, and how these macrocosms of that yin and yang. And this is what the great work is, right? The great work is that we're trying to reconcile these polarities. We're trying to reconcile these two seemingly opposite forces, right, of masculine and feminine, which we know, because yes, we went in order with the principles. Like as Ferdinand says, if you're trying to become and take on the true great work, it's not enough just to study 1 or 2. You have to somehow superimpose all 7 of them at the same time so that you can really get the full picture on what it's trying to say, and when you're trying to, basically it's a blueprint on how to play the game of life. In order to play the game of life, you have to use all 7 principles so you could be a conscious creator. And it's trying to tell you that the Hermeticist role is to make polar opposites meet in the middle, because even with the man woman, we have to meet in the middle, as Ferdinand just went through that. I won't go through all the different explanations to actually create light. So there is a conscious mind, a super conscious mind, and he talked about the Holy Trinity. Like, that's how you know we're speaking the truth, because I'm just regurgitating your talking points in my own way. You have the super conscious mind, the conscious mind, and the subconscious mind, which is also playing on the principles of gender. You're trying to get these seemingly opposite forces to meet to produce something. And here's the thing: the superconscious is really the father. The subconscious is the Sophia, or the mother, right? Because by the time we become consciously aware of something, we know we're being consciously aware of not what's being created, but what has been. You know what I mean? So you're trying to get the feminine, you're trying to get the masculine, the superconscious, and the conscious to come together and to meet in the middle, to agree. Because sometimes your superconscious wants one thing, your subconscious wants one thing, right? And we haven't done the great work. We haven't done the alchemical, because we're talking about chemicals now. We haven't done the alchemical work of making these seemingly polar, these opposites meet. And when these opposites meet, as Ferdinand said, it creates a spark, a bubble, a generation, which then thus the conscious, which is represented as the sun, the manifestation sun, everything under the sun, Thov, Horus, the consciousness, which is representing the sun, can now benefit off the work of the superconscious, which is the father, the subconscious, which is the mother. And then the subconscious, which to me, you have the superconscious, you have the conscious in your heart, and then the subconscious is your heart, and then the conscious is your gut. That's that other forgotten brain that we forget, that we work with. We have 3 brains. We have 1 brain, we have 2 brains, and we have the brain that's within the gut, which is the sun. That's the everything under the sun. That's where, even they talk about the gut. You start to see that's where the snake is curled up at the base. You know what I mean? And he's eating the fruits from the father, the superconscious, in the meeting of the heart. You gotta think about it. You can't tell me superconscious is in the mind and the subconscious is in the heart. Because what are we trying to bring coherence between? You know what I mean? We're trying to bring a certain coherence between the as above and the so below. And the book is telling you, and once again, we just got through the intro. That's ironic. We done spent 4 hours, in the intro of a book. We ain't even get into the meat of potatoes. You know what I mean? But I'll save you a short story. You as an alchemist, me as an alchemist, everyone out here is trying to do the great work. We are called to create and to play a game of life. Only way we can properly do it when one can control his masculine and his feminine nature. Why? These are the principles of generation. And when you don't control them, you are more at effect versus the conscious causality. And I don't think that we're trying to merge with the woman. Now, the woman is a good way, right? Because she is a representation. But if you're trying to merge without higher consciousness, you might merge with the wrong woman. And then by the time the effects come, it's too late, because by the time we're not conscious of real time. We're conscious after a certain time, after the patterns form, then we can start seeing like, oh, this tree is growing. I think the better way, speaking out the Ferdinand, is to get within the purity and merge these energies within self. You know what I mean? So you become sure of the polar opposites meeting within self. So when you meet self outside of self in the woman, you know whether this is a fruit, whether this is a representation of these principles meeting within inside of self, because this just showed us we're all meeting this. Now, unfortunately, right, this is what I believe, the Adam and the Eve, man is cursed by his need to get over his vanity metrics, and woman is cursed by over her need of thirsting for ego. You know what I mean? Thirsting for knowledge, thirsting for wisdom, and she's willing to circumvent the controller of it and try to, as the Sophia did. Remember, in narcissism, her sin was she created without the father principle, and when she created without the father principle, she created a false light, which was the Yabadal. And since she created it with the false light without the father is the knowing principle. So the feminine is the being principle. But since she created without the knowing principle, the son thought he created himself. Remember, and that's what it's describing. Because when he looked up, he saw no knowing. All he saw was self. So he didn't understand, you know what I mean? Because the feminine wasn't properly created. This is what the narcissism believes. So this is why that purity and that, because we're nothing but chemistry says. So even without knowing some of this knowledge, if you bring your body into harmonious, that means you have to be meeting these. There's no way, because when you're caught in the polarities, yes,
it takes balance.
So when you're bringing your body, this is why men always say we crave peace. You got to think about it. Women say they want safety. Men say they want peace. That's the same thing. Polarity viewed from a different perspective. But is peace? Can you have peace without safety and safety without peace to a degree? You know what I mean? So we're really wanting the same things, but we're going about it within a different way. But I think, right? I think that in this realm that we're in, storyline that we're in, that the masculine was imbued or tasked with raising up the divine feminine, because the divine feminine can't do it within its own power, because it doesn't know it's supposed to be the light to the darkness, but it doesn't mean that darkness is bad. We were thrown into the womb of the matrix without light. Jesus came back, or Lucifer, they always talk about light or the light bearer being brought, because the darkness is going to always yield to the light. The darkness yielded to a false light, and we came into the world of illusions. The spirit of truth, or the light of truth, the coming of Christ, is returning the true light, and now she's going to yield herself back into that type of light. But this isn't an external thing that you need a woman to happen inside of you. This is happening within inside of ourselves, because we contain the fallen feminine principle, just how they contain the fallen masculine principle, but they're yin into our yang. So I believe our polarity of the feminine can't get to where they need to be, because we are polarizing them. You know what I mean? And until we do the work, since they are the receptive, they're not the light, they're not the lead, they are the reciprocal mirroring principle of man, his greatest mirror. You know what I mean? His greatest mirror. And as we do this 7 Hermetic principles, and then we know that they're not to be practiced individual, but as a whole. So we take the principle of gender, as it told us, into all things that we do. And we know that we're trying to make these polarities, these seemingly opposites, be one. Right. And I know you want to add some sauce to it. When we stop seeing our feminine counterpart as a separate of us, they're not separate of us. Actually, we're separate from ourselves. Right. And we're not whole until we become into an energetic, hermaphroditic energetic state, not only as above, but so below. So this is how I can tell your journey, my brother, not just throwing your path, because you have a wife, right? And that's how I can tell where my journey is with certain self, because I'm mastering certain of the as below principles. You know what I mean? And you judge a man based off his fruits. And not only do you have a wife, unless you in the bathroom hiding because she don't know you talk like this, seemingly you have a certain order when it comes to understanding that she is then thus reciprocating and yielding to, which is creating some sort of harmony. You know what I mean? But it's as above, so below. You know what I mean? So I don't think that necessarily that we find wise. I think it's something that we be, and then somehow magically the thing outside of us starts to appear itself.
Let's speak on that, right? So very thankful for the compliment. Really appreciate that. I would agree with you that there are some people, maybe not everybody. There's some people who don't choose their wives. Their spirit just knows, and I knew that. I believe it was 2010, in April or May of 2010. That was the first time that I had seen my wife, and I just knew. Like, some things you believe, and there's other things you just know.
Come on now.
Everything unfolded. We're very blessed. 6 children, all beautiful children, strong,
home raised, homeschooled, nutrients, and
as much of it with each of them as we could. The youngest ones, definitely all of that. But yeah, we're very blessed, and it's a result of a balancing act. You know, there's a lot of sacrifice and humility that happens in this space, but there are many rewards. You know, I can talk about all the challenges, and there are many of them. But when I look back at, and just to give everybody perspective, who's listening, April 3rd, 2025, my wife and I, we would have been married 10 years.
That's my son's birthday.
Or look at that. Right. So it's a balancing act, but like I said, it's a lot of rewards, you know, for man to be man, based on what you and I have been talking about for the last 20 minutes. That does require that female element and fuse together, and that space, that man and that woman, each one of them got to give up a lot of stuff. You know, they got to move in a space of unity, where there's going to be a bunch of times where they don't, and they're going to have to find their way back to that path and move on it righteously. And then the fruits, as you said, they become extremely healthy and strong, full of minerals and nutrition, right? And we've been blessed to achieve that with our children. You know, our 2-year-old is like a little Mack truck, right? Then our 6-year-old, she's a gymnast / ballerina / boxer, and then our boys, Huey and Elijah, they're doing amazing things in sports, and they're strong and they're healthy and they're intelligent. Right. And older girls, Samira and Shamara, they are amazing when it comes down to doing hair and connecting with people, natural connectors, you know. So,
and that's it. And to me, that's the fruit, that's the multiplying, that's the filling of the earth, that's the subduing. So you see how life can really become simple on the most simplicity. Like, what are we here for? And then when you honor the spiritual understanding of what happened when the man and union come together, I mean, the masculine and the feminine come together spiritually, it equals life. When we come together on earth, so it equals life. And that's just what I see, is just more life, as Drake would say. You know what I mean? More life. But it happens not separate. And even for me, I'm a bachelor. And I'm preaching this. I'll just be real. I plan on being a bachelor a long time, but it doesn't mean that I don't overstand, and I don't want to be contradict to what I know the spirit is. and what it means. And I understand to a level of degree that my spiritual work hits a plateau. I tell women that all the time, but don't mean I'm going to pick you, but I understand that my spiritual level hits a plateau because I need two minds to agree on a philosophy in order to, this is why Jesus, this is a whole nother chapter. But if you read the Bible, ironically, before he appeared, it didn't say run into Mary Magdalene, bump into it. It said he appeared in front of Mary Magdalene. So, but before he appeared in front of her, he fasted for 7 days. You know what I mean? He fasted for 7 days, and then he appeared to Mary Magdalene. It said appeared. And then when he appeared to her, what did he do? He casted out 7 demons. You know what I mean? Which were the imbalances of her 7 Hermetic principles, her 7 chakras, why he needed a vessel. And remember, the disciples were jealous of her because they said he showed her favor. He's, I'm not showing her favor. She's trying to mirror, because much as I love you and some of my other brothers and we connect, you can never connect because we're men. So we're always going to have our slight disagreeables and versions of our own self, right? And we're not made, a man's not made to be a mirror to another man. But guess who is made to be a mirror to you, to mirror you, to produce in your likeness, even down to your own children, the woman. But if you have a woman who's not on the same accord as you, she can produce your children. Now your children become a pariah because she don't even want the child to be like, she's not here to mirror you. You know what I mean? Yes, absolutely. So on the highest level, it's the same thing. A man has a conscious thought, but he's having trouble with the principle of gender, aka his subconscious mirroring the conception of self that he wants. You know what I mean? But he doesn't understand the language. The feminine, they tell you, we need to feel safe. You're pumping your thoughts when you think of them with anxiety, with fear, with all these. This is not ways that the subconscious understands. The subconscious is not going to yield to a man that every time he talks, what do you want? You know, I think we should, you know what I mean? It's the same thing that's happening inside. So for those of us who have been good with women, it's a blessing, because once you understand how the subconscious is mirroring the women, it's just as unruly. It's just, you're going to have to, if you don't know how to deal with the woman, you're going to get most of the time, your ASS handed to you. You know what I mean? You have to properly understand how to control, how to maneuver, and how to be a man. Not how to be a woman, not how to meet a woman with the woman energy, but how to meet a woman with that masculine energy. And as Neville Goddard, he likens the subconscious to like a wild horse that needs to be tamed. You know what I mean? So I'm not trying to apply that to the ladies, but to a degree, you know what I mean? It's not taming, but edifying. You know, a woman's not just going to know how you like it. You have to show her in your likeness on how you like it. She has to be willing to then thus receive the likeness and admire it and have respect enough to then reproduce in your own likeness. If she doesn't, you know what I mean? A lot of times people don't get pregnant because they don't know your wife or your girlfriend don't really like you like that. So why would her body choose to replicate something in your likeness? Whether it's your thought, whether it's your business, or whether it's your damn child. Or if your dude child come out, you don't look like you don't. Yes, because her spirit is so against what you is, she's not willing to reproduce in your image. And we need the feminine to be aligned with the masculine. It can't, a house divided cannot stand. I heard you say that before. You know what I mean? A house divided cannot stand. We know that's in the Bible. Can any two walk together, not be agreed? Some of us think we're walking together, but we're not agreed. This is why we're such at odds, because you only can have one mind. I can't think God is this and you think God is, we can, but that's a house divided.
Sun Tzu in the verse.
Say that again.
I said that's Sun Tzu philosophy in the inverse. Right, so the Sun Tzu's philosophy is an army that's going to practically guarantee a win. Has an army that has the same spirit amongst all its ranks.
Yeah. And then here's another thing, men. I'll give you this. The reason why you're so disgruntled, because it's something in a man that's only at peace. I won't say happy. That's more feminine. But only at peace when he looks around and his reality is formed in his image, as Genesis says. It's when things that is not formed in his image that he gets restless, he gets desperate, he gets everything. I can't control my woman, my life, nothing. I have this image in my head, you know what I mean? And I cannot bring congruency to my reality within my image. A man, if I really say, I'm just speaking for self, if I'm not looking for completion, I'm just looking for continuance imagining and then things in my reality being formed in that image. And when I look at stuff, even stuff I don't like it. Why? Because it's not reflective of me. That's why I don't like it. And I can't help. I'm a man. So you can't make me like something that's not of me. I don't care. I'm more embodying my essence. A woman is more agreeable to have a stance and to be swayed by another, even if it's not something that she might necessarily agree, because she's more influenced by societal things, which is fine. That's in her nature because she's supposed to be more influenced by the masculine or by other initiatives. But you, as a man, you're supposed to see yourself, know thyself, and then form into your external world within your own likeness, because that's what the generation is. And then I'm sorry. I remember teaching my son certain things, and when he was younger, he used to sound like, man, this sounds unfair. But I'm like, you may be right. You may be right in certain degree, because being a man is not easy. The responsibility, the accountability, the certain things, how you have to just take certain things. And, you know, I mean, like I was trying to tell him about, you know, when him and my daughter's walking, how he has to assume the outside of the street and all that. So to his young mind, he's like, yo, dang, I gotta do. But it's like, yes, this is just a role. It doesn't mean that you have a better role or a higher role. It's just is the role. You know what I mean? Thanks. Yes. And for me, you call me misogyny, whatever the words they like to use on me, I get hear it all the time. A man's role is to form all things in his likeness, and it's not to give up whether that likeness is or is not to a woman. You know what I mean? As much as we like to, for me, my peepers go up as soon as I present an idea and she's trying to get me to do something other than I'm already like, oh, wait. I don't care if it's good or bad. That's not your role to come in and to redecorate or to you know what I mean? You are more the receptive principle. And if anything, I need you like Mary Magdalene. I need you to clean out your chakra and all that you thought that you knew before. You know what I mean? And I tell ladies this, I don't consider all males men. I think men is something you have to evolve to. You know, so just because you're a male and a man is two different things. But when you come across the man, you're not here to tell that man what to do. Why? There's an order. That man has submitted to something higher than you. It was Eve that was trying to circumvent. And then here's the thing. Not only did she want to circumvent Adam, she thought that she knew even more than God did. You know what I mean? She wanted to circumvent. That's in her nature, to circumvent both orders. You know what I mean? But I always say Adam is the one who simped out, because in the Bible, it didn't end when she ate the fruit. It ended with who? Adam, because he said, yo, you know, I gave you dominion over this plane, which is the 3D plane. That's undeniable. I tell women all the time, yes, when it comes to 4D, y'all got it. But when we come to this motherfucker right here, this is a man's word. You can't tell me nothing. This is my dominion. And there's a certain order that it has to follow. You know what I'm saying? And when this order gets circumvented, then you get chaos. And I'm not trying to say chaos is good or bad. You know what I mean? But I don't prefer chaos. I prefer a level of control and a level of order, a level of poise, a level of discipline. These are all masculine traits that this 3D world is ruled by. You know what I mean? So, and when we understand that we're just trying to, once again, merge these polarities, you have a vision of self that you want to make into your own image. You have an unruly subconscious program within inside of you that wants to rebuff against it. We have to know the language of the subconscious and how to properly seduce it into an alignment. Because the one thing about it, and I'm not going to stay on this too long, we know this, you can't force a woman to do it. You have to like woo her. And you know what I mean? The moment you try to apply a different energy, you have to do things they're creatures of indirectness. You have to do innuendos. Same thing with the subconscious mind. It's things that you have to do. Once I started understanding the subconscious mind, the women, they are very closely related. It allowed me to understand the conscious mind don't want to say, oh, I want to become rich, I want to become millionaire. That's too easy. You have to sit it down and think of things and think of good feelings and vibe. There's a whole host that the subconscious mind, whether the man mind likes it or not, that the woman mind, subconscious mind, it speaks. And it doesn't speak the language of directness. This is why you got to meditate and you got to turn out the lights. You got to do all this thing, whether I like it or not. I feel like I should be able to say, I want to be this, and the subconscious obeys. But I'm not a one piece. I'm a dualistic, tripleistic entity masquerading as a one piece in this realm, when really it's multiple parts that make me me. And if I don't know these parts intimately, I'm gonna be frustrated. You know what I mean? If you don't know that the subconscious mind don't care how hard you grind and how hard you hustle, if you don't speak to it in the language that it understands, it won't never manifest what you want to manifest. You know what I mean? So I hope that we talked about these things, man. The principle of 7. And Lou said it's cooking. Shout out to my boy. Look, he stayed for the whole show. We must be cooking. You know what I'm saying? He stayed for the whole show.
Appreciate you listening, brother. You know, I appreciate you know what you bring in for us concerning gender, concerning those opposites, those yin yangs. I want to touch on yin yangs for a second, right? So I'm gonna bring something on the stage for us. Let's bring it up. We're gonna use this to touch gender for a second. So when we look at this zodiac wheel, we're looking at the principle of gender manifest. When we look at Scorpio, well, that's feminine energy, but Taurus is male energy. When we look at Pisces, Pisces is feminine energy, but Virgo is male energy. So Virgo is the virgin, Pisces is the fish.
Leo, Aquarius, I see it.
Yeah, you know, so you got polarized opposites in certain types of ways at the spiritual level. So we're talking about symbolism right now, but we also have those distinctions of male and female, or positive and negative energy. And then when
masculine,
we talk
feminine,
right, absolutely. And then when we take this same wheel and we apply it to processional zodiac, right? We're looking at the poles of the earth. Now we're looking at ages using this exact same wheel. And then we have male and female in that space. We have a patriarchal time frame of 12,960 years. And we have a matriarchal time frame of 12,960 years. You know, so when we look at the principle of gender manifest, it manifests in cycles. It manifests in force. It manifests in power. It manifests in form, right? But we can use this wheel to understand all of it. And to be a great credit to the 7 Hermetic principles. Go ahead, I'm listening.
Nah, this is powerful, because I see that we were in a masculine, and you know we know that it's flipped. So we know that if this place is being dominated by more of a feminine energy, that means the other place is more because you know the poles shift. You know what I mean? So now it's interesting that it says that we was in a period of masculine. You know what I mean? Yeah, I got it right. Did I? Hold on, let me make sure I got it.
We just came out of the Pisces.
A feminine period, right?
Well,
no.
So we just came out of the Piscean age, which was the last age of the masculine, and we have started the feminine with the age of Aquarius.
Right. So once again, that means that, right? Because in these other ages, even the industrial age, when man had to work with his hands so much, now we're seeing the age where it seems like technology, AI, man is working with his mind and doing things that the man who likes to work with his hands, it might seem like magic. Like, how are these things? Because he's not really putting his thoughts too much on his mind. He's just doing like Jesus was the carpenter. He's working with the elements that's in front of him. We're moving to an age to where now the elementals are switching. So now you're going to have to work with more of the spiritual, the unseen, the meta elements. And somehow the meta elements, the imaginational mind, are going to be the things that manifest more concretely than even the things that you do with your hands. You know what I mean? So you'll see people that are so-called, and the Bible did condemn Adam to this, but that age has come to an end. He condemned Adam to everything that he received in the Piscean age was off the sweat of his what? His brow. So now we're moving into a different age with streamers and Bitcoin and the biggest transfer wealth. And we're trying to figure out how these things could be true, because man is moving out of in one age where he had to work off the sweat of his brow, and now he's moving into a more mentalism age. So it's not that the age didn't exist before, but as we see that there's rhythm. So there might be times where it's never truly closed off, but it might be what's it called? A polarization set to a point within the polarity where it's giving the illusion of not of you working more off the sweat of your brow. But this new age will give you more of that illusion to where you start seeing the things made in your mind immediately manifest in front of you, whether you think of someone and they call, whether you think of something you see it pop up on your Instagram. What some of us think is our phone listen to us. Yes and no. Part of it, we live in a mental plane. So if it ain't, the Akashic is listening to, you know what I mean? It's listening and it's replicating within your feed the different probabilities that's going on in your mind. You know what I mean? So we have to recognize that we are moving into that age where and even in the Bible, not to go into the Bible, but Revelation, we're being revealed that New Jerusalem. Where did they say the New Jerusalem was going to come from? The heavens. But where did it say where it was going to go? Was it going to stay in the heavens or was it going to come on earth? So we keep trying to leave the planet for why? Earth is the paradise. You know what I'm saying?
I just heard at the temple the other day that New Jerusalem, that's New Jersey.
There you go. Right. We said this is the ancient land. You know what I mean?
Now, peep this, right? I'm not going to go too deep, but I'm going to just throw a couple of things at you. I was looking at the map yesterday or the day before, right? And I'm just looking around and I'm following the riverbeds. And I'm looking at southern Illinois, and I've heard a few people talk about it. And looking at where the Ohio is a tributary into the Mississippi.
Right.
And there's Cairo there, a city named Cairo that's right there at that junction point of those two rivers. Then I'm looking at you go not too far away from there to the east, and you got Canaan Valley out there. Right? And
who's this guy on your post? Who's this guy on your post? Eric Steele. What the hell is he talking about?
Oh, I don't know. Something about I ain't gonna say his name. Something about a person that I know who I guess she got into some kind of a negative conversation with him today or something. I don't know. I haven't talked to her for probably for months, and yes,
I thought they had beef with the ism.
I haven't talked to him since before I stopped talking to her, so I don't know what's going on with that.
I thought they had beef with the ism. Tell them like, yo, come on the round table. You got beef with the ism. Let's.
It's honestly surprising that this person who wrote the comments wrote them in the comments, because this is a person that I have a lot of respect for, and they're brilliant. And, you said their name. I'm not going to say their name. They're brilliant. But, this is kind of like out of character for someone of that level, in my opinion. This is like, if I wouldn't have known her,
right?
If I wouldn't have known anything about her, I would have probably believed her if she told me that she was Dr. Sebi's granddaughter. This is how brilliant that this woman is, So to see those comments, I'm going to meditate on the abundance of love, compassion, and empathy, in her life, because whatever she may be dealing with, it may be causing this type of behavior. Usually, people of this stature, of this level, if they had any type of a problem, they would handle it privately, right. So when you see this type of behavior from someone who's brilliant and well accomplished, highly educated, they may be having a challenge with something that they're having a hard time.
Yeah, being a woman. So my dad, look, one time, right? I wanted to get and we can get off after this, but I wanted, and this is cool, this can go live, but I wanted my dad's opinion on this young lady I was fancying at the time, several years ago. And I was like, giving him the full rundown, like, wanted the approval. And he sat, me, I can talk. He listened quietly, and we was in the car. I remember like it was yesterday. I said everything I needed to say. He just like, yeah, son, but she's still a woman. And that spoke volumes, meaning that, yes, but the nature is the nature. And we know sometimes when it comes to the level of hearing a trigger and controlling that emotion, they're not the greatest counterparts at that. So at times that emotion, no matter how, it might not circumvent the nature of the emotionality reaction. And we understand once you get into that emotional state, you're no longer quote unquote thinking logically, and then you might be predisposed to do something that is usually uncharacteristic under different stoic neutral mind neutralization circumstances, as we learned today in the Kabbalion, and you will let the pendulum kick you in your ass because you weren't able to see the pendulum neutralize and go under a different authority. But shout out to you for handling with it. This is the beautiful part, because I used to a lot, but once I understood, like we talked about earlier, that I'm here to bring the spirit of truth and be in my lightness in my darkness. and my Scorpio nature, what I had to realize is that my Scorpio nature is more of a dark being than it is. And not saying it's right or wrong, but I'm like 65-60% dark being than I am. You have some people are light beings. Some people really thrive under the light, under the sun. I thrive under the moon, under the darkness, under the mysterious, under the unknown, under the things that, so me accepting myself for self and allowing my understanding of unconditional love allows me to sometimes to meet forth with force without feeling any guilt of the pendulum swing. Come on, pendulum, I'm ready, neutralized. And like you said, I'm sleeping like a baby.
Peep the wheel, man. Like I'm heavy Taurus energy. My the sun, ascendant, I think Mercury, but it's either Chiron or matter of fact, I think it's Chiron that I got in Taurus, right? So I got a lot of earth energy, right? But then you already know with the zodiac, what's complementary is earth and water. And then fire and air is complementary. Well, you and I, like you said, you, me, and I'm you, right? And we just giving different flavors of the same thing throughout this podcast and throughout our existence on a daily basis, through this existence and all the others in the multiversal realms that we inhabit.
Talk that talk, man. Listen, brother, I definitely appreciate you, man. We have some great bills, man. I feel like the synergy is getting crazier. So, man, they better watch out a couple months in. You know what I mean? We out here like Kobe and Shaq. You know what I'm saying? Saying the same stuff, different energy. You said you're a Taurus?
Taurus, yeah.
Oh yeah, that's my brother and my sister and my daughter's a Taurus. So you know what I'm saying? Yeah, absolutely. You know what I mean? But yeah, man, I think we chopped up some good sauce, man. I don't think there's any questions. You know what I'm saying? It's up to you. You know what I'm saying? We want to, because that's just the 7 principles. There's some. I would love to do another episode, maybe the Great Paradox. You know what I mean? And then maybe that'll just be the end of this. For right now, we'll move on to something else. But I definitely think, we're gonna have to put like at least an hour or so to that next time about the Great Paradox.
I'm wondering if they're ready for the Great Plains and the 7 subplanes of each of the Great Plains. See that right there, I mean, it would take a little bit of time, but that right there is some crucial understanding, for a person if they really wanted to take this journey. I mean, it's written there in the Kabbalah exactly what to do.
Hey, man. You say you the bringer of truth, and I'm right here co-piloting, co-creating with you. You know what I'm saying? I'm in the spirit of truth. You the bringer of the truth. I'm in the spirit of truth. So, listen, if you ready to dance, you know me. These type of subjects, salute to both of you thrivers. Appreciate you, my guy. If you want to dance in that realm, I'll bring my tap dancer shoes, because it is important. I feel like we're bringing it down to a level of practicality. And once again, that great paradox, man, the great paradox is how I reconcile man being God and not needing no other external leader or teacher or person to mediate that to me. You know what I mean? And the full understanding that it is and it ain't, and it ain't and it is and it's true and it's not. And some of the examples that the book uses, I know for sure that'll help us to even go and just regurgitate and just be in the spirit of reading these lines and helping others. He who grasps the truths of mental nature of the universe is well advanced to the path of mastery. Absolutely. And yeah, man, it's definitely up to you, bro. Either way, I'm gonna turn up and get some fire, guaranteed. And if we decide that we want to continue to build on that, or we want to, touch on some other subjects, we could figure that out.
Yeah, man, you was cooking today, bro. You had the grill going, stove going, both of the ovens. You
Hey
had
man, like I said, man,
you know.
you providing the platform and the good energy, the vibe, man. And I see, I'm stepping my level up. I even feel like, not to say that you have a level to be stepped up, but even when you be on your thing, I'm like, man, Ferdinand is in the groove. It feels like we both bringing out, different version of each other that we may not fully be able to tap in on our own. And in the spirit of co-creation and co-opetition. I love co-opetition. You know what I'm saying? Meaning that we're not competing head to head, but we're not even trying to one up each other, but just in the spirit of us co-cooking together. Like, oh, he cooking. Oh yeah, he going. And then you help me spark my cook. So that's how I look at it. It's like a steel sharpens steel. And we're on here bringing the best. And I appreciate that for you validating the cooking, but I also have to appreciate if it wasn't for you throwing in the tidbits and providing the good energy for me to. Because some people you can't even flow. They like you trying to get out, you battling them. They might get jealous, don't want you to have the floor. Yeah, so the fact that we're able to be non-jealous and let each other just have our moments, man, it really helps both of us, bring out the good. So,
And I appreciate you highlighting that. That's the beauty of operating an independent type of movement. It puts you in that space where you can have a live like this, where we don't have to have any interruptions by advertisements. We can have these conversations full on out for as long as it takes to have the conversation. Obviously, we probably won't pass 3 hours too many times.
right.
But either way, it puts us in a position to build in a space where a lot of the times it's hard to find someone else to have these high vibrational conversations, because this is, like you said, this is high science that we're talking about. This is high vibrational content that we're talking about. This is also a lot of problem and solutions that are being talked about without us even really realizing that we're really giving the answer to certain problems. And so it becomes a great resource as a result of cooperation, as a result of pushing a message of love. Sometimes it's a little tough love, other times it's nice soft love, but at the end of the day, it's saving power, it's truth.
And I'll say this, man, just hit me when you said love, man. I say love is anything that gets you to act more like yourself. You know what I'm trying to say? Yeah, for somebody, when you said it, it just you know how it be. The coach just throw something in you. That's how it just immediately came a whole. Like, when we say that we're spreading love, you know what I mean? Because I don't even know sometimes what the true definition, but if there was a greater definition, if this message can help you accept more of you, you know what I mean, and more of yourself, and like he put up when we first started, that he got from the great Morris Science, being yourself, and Farrakhan said talks about that a lot. Accepting yourself and being natural to yourself and being you. Which I think that we all effectively do that without having to be under the perjury of other people's wills. That is the closest thing to God, if any, because now you're providing a pure vessel, channel, without restraint or hesitation or constricting thoughts, to whether people like it or not. Say, hey man, I'm just being me, man. So if you don't like it, you literally just liking me being myself, which I can't do nothing with you if you don't like me just being myself. So whether, and I've had that, oh, you too excited, you too this, hey, listen, whatever way you say, I'm just going to be me. And I stop allowing, other people's wills to squash my will to be myself, because I just want to be myself. I know it's not going to be accepted by everybody. I know I'm not everybody's cup of tea. I know some people I embrace wrong, and as my, I'm not even going to say that. But as someone once told me, I'm, in the gaslightery way, I'm sorry you feel that way, but it's proper right now, that I'm sorry that they feel that way. But I cannot not sacrifice not being myself because it makes you uncomfortable. You know what I mean?
Man, when it comes down to, let's say we take what you just said and we align it, we apply it to gardening, right? Let's apply it to gardening, and we're growing a marijuana plant. So if we're growing that marijuana plant, we're going to be able to shape the size of that plant based upon the root system. So let's say a 10-gallon pot versus a 50-gallon pot. We're going to get two totally different size plants. We're going to get two totally different size flowers. All of this is going to be determined by the root system. Now, above ground, we can start to shape barriers to control that growth as well. Now, if we have a bunch of suggestions in our lives, they serve as something of the same to block the growth, right? But as we control those suggestions along the pathways of spiritual destiny, along the lines of what righteousness would what that would be to self. Not righteousness, or righteousness, what that is to self, right? Aligning with that, oh yeah, it creates something special. And what we see is an explosion of knowledge, an explosion of awareness because of what happens in the picture with Jesus, right? So Jesus is right there. Here goes the little girl. He's like, hey, give me the teddy bear, right? And the little girl doesn't want to give up this teddy bear. She loves the teddy bear. The teddy bear keeps her safe at night when she had bad dreams, right? But the eye is about to pop out, the button, and the insides is coming out and everything. It looked a little dirty. It looked like she just picked it up out the sewer, right? But she's got to have faith. And she's got to give up that teddy bear without even knowing that Jesus got a bigger, better teddy bear behind his back for her. And the more that we do that in our life, not even from a religious perspective, for everyone out there who's listening, not even from a religious perspective, the more that we give up, that we sacrifice of things that don't actually really serve. And then we replace them with things that serve, like the sun, right? A lot of it to our skin. Like water, a whole lot of it through inside the body, right? Like the nutrition, a whole lot of it that's minerally dense, right? Like the exercise, that's high intensity, like the sleep, that's peaceful, and the goals,
masculine, feminine, gender,
that are impactful, that are astronomical, right? That goals that are so astronomical that when you tell people about them, they say, "Oh, that's kind of aggressive." I don't know, you better than me. That's how you know that you got the right goals. Because even if you fall short on those kind of goals, chances are you bumped your head on the stratosphere or on the moon. You bumped your head on Saturn or something like that. Because you was aiming for planet Z9 in a galaxy that's so far that they had to use the James Webb telescope to see it.
And that's where the principle of gender come in, because once you understand, like I said, understand the principle of gender helps me really understand women, because that's where the principle of the feminine, is better, because then you get to add that level of delusion. And you know that you're righteous in your delusion because you understand the energies and it's required. Because then you're working with the masculine, the masculine works with the reason. Everyone around you trying to reason how it's possible. But since you understand the principle of gender, and you've chosen this state to occupy more of your principle of delusionism and not needing evidence and not, you know what I mean? And then you're able to properly work the magic. So this is why I said, once we really understand it, it really does describe every phenomenon. Like you can really OD and get on people's nerves to keep every time they say something. Well, it's like the principle of this, or just like and then you can just quote one of the 7 principles to describe what the person is talking about. You know what I mean? That's how powerful they are.
Hey, everybody. Thank y'all so much for tuning in to Community Roundtable. This is episode 15, the 7 Hermetic Principles. That's Raw Thriver. I'm Ferdinand, the bringer of balance, leader of many disciplines, and I am here to help everyone out there realize the best version of themselves by exposing their gift. And you expose your gift by just being yourself. But how do you do that? You've got to have the proper mineral balance based upon who you are that makes up the core of you, with the right dilution of water and the proper amount of heat from the sun, and stirring that thing up with exercise and giving it some rest with no lights at all, with sleep, and then having those goals to take it up a notch with your spices in that soup, right? With your whatever your additives are, right? You might put a little soy sauce in there, right? A little pepper. You might put a little, I don't know, maybe some nutmeg up in there. You might get a little fancy, And this is how we achieve our dreams. It's not even an exaggeration for everyone out there who's listening. This is how you achieve your dreams. This is how the things that you're literally dreaming at night right?
Mm.
These things are pointing you toward destiny, right? And how we achieve that at a higher clip is by living a certain type of way. And that same thing of how we live a certain type of way also can produce disease. So listen, I want everybody out there to win. That's the algorithm right there. Y'all be blessed and expose your gift.